At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Tom Tugendhat is knocked out of the Tory leadership contest with 4 candidates remaining.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock. It's Tuesday, July the 19th, and you're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading our programme this morning. Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss, Kemi Badenoch are the final 4 contestants left in the Tory leadership contest. Another round of voting will take place this afternoon.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson will hold his final cabinet meeting in number 10 today. Conservative MPs have backed Johnson's government in a confidence vote, giving him 7 more weeks in Downing Street before handing over to his successor.
Britain will experience its hottest day on record today. Temperatures will reach up to 42 degrees in some parts of the country. The Met Office has issued an extreme heat warning. Network Rail says don't make unnecessary journeys on the trains.
And Prince Harry has delivered a keynote speech to the United Nations in New York. The Duke of Sussex spoke of the rolling back of constitutional rights in the US and highlighted the havoc of climate change along with the war in Ukraine.
Folks, thanks for being on board with us. We just want to share your stories this morning. How are you dealing with the heat? Did you sleep well? Did you not sleep well? Let us know your ways of getting through it or anything else that is concerning you. A lot of you are concerned that there is a nanny state what am I trying to say, a nanny state feeling to all of this, that people are being told what to do. However, there are a lot of stupid people who need to be told what to do, and there are vulnerable people. Why do you not laugh when I say stupid people? Because there are stupid people.
Well, it's not always stupid people that get themselves in trouble. But anyway, the point being, thousands
people,
of excess deaths
people
over the next couple of days. Well, so we'll be...
This is right.
Yeah.
And this is caused by things like blood pressure, strokes, all sorts of things.
All increased in the heat.
The second, there can be another complication to all this. And this is why they issue all these warnings. But anyway, hopefully you're smart enough that you think, you know how to deal with all of it. That's fine. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews as well. Love to hear from you. Back after this. And the time is 6:02. The Conservative leadership contenders will be whittled down to 3 today, with MPs set to cast their votes. This is the 4th round of voting. Do you know what? I think this is the best game show on TV.
It's like Love Island for politicians.
Yes.
It's
Except
brutal.
they all hate each other.
Well, they do in Love Island probably as well. Anyway, this comes as the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, was eliminated last night. He received the fewest amount of votes. The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, held on to first place with 115 votes.
Meanwhile, Penny Mordaunt, who is the Trade Minister, she took 2nd place. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, in 3rd. And Equalities Minister, Kemi Badenoch, in 4th.
Well, the final 2 candidates will be decided by tomorrow. Let's get some full analysis now on voting and political ins and outs with Katie Frank, who joins us in the studio. Very good morning,
Morning,
to
Katie.
you, Katie. I was reading in the Times this morning that their analysis is, frankly, that Liz Truss and Penny Mordaunt have done not well enough, really, to secure their position in the final 2, and it's all wide open. And, in fact, it could be Kemi Badenoch.
Yes, well, Penny Mordaunt, one of the clear, favourites, front-runners, etc., has... the steam has gone out of her campaign a little bit. And although Liz Truss has started to pull ahead slightly in terms of where she was previously, catching up to Penny Mordaunt, that isn't quite enough. Now, obviously, the eyes are all on where Tom Tugendhat's votes are going. Are they going to go to Kemi, or are they going to go to Liz or Penny?
Or are they going to be just distributed across the board, really?
Exactly. Well, this is the issue, is as someone who's worked closely with a lot of the political caucuses, especially like the Northern Research Group, for instance, they don't often operate all as one, as a bloc. It's a complete misnomer in politics. So it's likely that they will be split. Even the famous European Research Group, who went a bit quiet during the era of the Boris Johnson government, seems to have ratcheted it up again. But even they cannot seem to decide where they want their votes to go.
So just explain to people who they are, what they stand for, and what sort of candidate they would want.
Yeah, so the European Research Group, in theory, is on the right wing of the Conservative Party. For a long time, they campaigned for Brexit, etc. And they were very key and fundamental in the downfall of Theresa May, for instance. They are often seen as the more Thatcherite wing of the party, very strong in terms of defence, social policy, etc., but more on the free market end of the spectrum. In theory, that's not how it always plays out.
So this all sounds like Liz Truss to me.
Well, it's what perhaps Liz Truss would like to be. She's tried to pitch herself as the Thatcherite candidate, but I think a lot of the Conservative backbenchers are seeing her as a bit of a lukewarm Thatcherite candidate, not quite the strong and also safe pair of hands. A lot of the Conservative backbenchers are concerned that she may be just a female Boris Johnson, in essence, and that we may lurch from one set of crises to another with Liz Truss.
Right, in terms of the process, we've got another vote again today. The threshold that they need to meet is 120 votes to be guaranteed a place in the final 2. Rishi Sunak just 5 votes away from that, so he's solidified his position. He's sorted. He's going to be
So wait a minute, we're down to 4 now, yeah?
Yes, and it's going to be down to 2.
So 2 go today.
That's my understanding.
Semi-final.
But Tom Tugendhat is obviously... It was just interesting when he got knocked out last night, everybody falling over themselves to try and praise him, and obviously after his votes, right? Yeah. And you read in the Times today, Liz Truss done a big interview, and she's saying she's going to dedicate 3% of GDP to defence spending by 2030, clearly in an overture to all of Tom's supporters. So is that the sort of thing we're going to hear more of today, people trying to secure his votes?
Potentially, and I think also we're going to hear a lot more about the China issue, for instance, something that Tom was quite vocal on, and you've heard this increasingly ratcheting up. Whether that is because they view Rishi Sunak as potentially weaker on China, a lot of our chancellors have been viewed as weaker on China, and Liz Truss may tackle that, whether that's going to be, a dedication to her pork and cheese markets that she opened in China or had a desire to. So, really, it is who is going to face Rishi Sunak. That is assuming that he manages to hold on to these votes. Yeah. We do see a lot of political strategy operating here. A lot of people may back candidates deliberately in order to, for instance, Rishi Sunak's camp will be trying to see who he will win most likely against.
Yes.
And they will want to, whether that's Penny, Liz or Kemi, get that person
up against him
in order to secure his
So
victory.
again, just explain to me, so Rishi Sunak says he's got 151 votes or whatever it is. Are they guaranteed, or does he go back to zero for the next round today?
So in theory, it goes back to zero. He has to hold on to those votes. No vote is guaranteed. And I think that the fact that the Conservative Party is known for being brutal and ruthless with a lot of its leaders, and I think we've seen that with both Theresa May, with Boris Johnson. A lot of, for instance, the Red Wall Conservative MPs lost faith in Boris Johnson, even though they came in under his leadership, but they were of the view, what Boris Johnson giveth, Boris Johnson taketh away, and they're going to brutally look at that.
Katie, you're the expert, right? And you know, we love talking to you, but what we also love doing is talking and listening to our viewers and listeners. So at this stage of the game, we want to bring in to be involved in the conversation John McIntosh. So we go to Southwark in London, not too far away. John, how are you doing today? How are you coping with the heat?
Good morning. Well, I'm not good in the heat, but I'm coping. It's early in the day, so that's better.
So, John, you're 76 years of age. You're a former headmaster, top school, former headmaster of the London Oratory
Wonderful school.
Wonderful. Isabel's such a snob. She will love the idea that you're doing that.
Fantastic school.
Wonderful school. I went to a wonderful school. It was in Belfast.
Okay, well, you were headmaster of that school.
Wonderful school.
Very difficult to get into.
Wonderful headmaster. What do you make of what we're seeing in these four candidates, and what are your concerns?
Well, my concern is that during the televised debates, we haven't really got a proper feeling for what these candidates stand for, with one exception, and that's Kemi. I think Kemi Badenoch has given us a good picture of what she really stands for. She is very authentic, very honest. And one feels that she's somebody who can be trusted, somebody who has integrity. And I know she lacks experience. She hasn't the cabinet experience of other people. But, you know, experience is not everything. You mentioned the school. And I was appointed headmaster when I was 30 years old. And a lot of my thought,
oh, no.
No, make up for that. It's all experience.
John, we're having problems with your internet, our connection. We're getting every other word, which is such a shame, because it was just getting interesting. Sorry, you were saying, let's give it another go. You were just talking about how you got appointed age 30. No, he's frozen, hasn't he? I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go back to Katie. Yeah.
Talking about Kemi's experience.
John, just explain to your Wi-Fi connection, or something's just not right, and a lot of things play up in the heat, which, as Isabel said, is really, really unfortunate there. I don't know how we reboot you, John, but we really would love to either talk to you now or talk to you later in the programme. Give us a wave, let's see how... Oh, he's there again, right?
Bear with us.
So, anyway, you were talking about how lack of experience or lack of profile, not necessarily a bad thing, because at the tender young age of 30, when your little bones were hardly formed, you were put in charge. You were a headmaster, which is incredible.
Yes. She brings to the table a lot of other attributes, such as enthusiasm and dedication. And I think she's somebody who will learn very quickly, and what she needs to do is make sure she properly...
I'm so sorry, John. We're going to have another go and try and come back to you a little bit later on in the programme. John McIntosh, former head of the London Oratory, having a few problems with his internet.
What he was saying, Katie, there, of course, he was talking about in Kemi Badenoch's case, this lack of profile. No, he wasn't. He was talking about lack of experience. But lack of profile, lack of experience... do count against, don't they, in terms of the public? I mean, this was Boris Johnson's big thing, wasn't it? I mean, basically everybody knew who he was.
Exactly. And whether we like it or loathe it, we have gone into a more presidential style of campaign in UK politics within the past, 20 years, etc. So with Kemi, she's all over a wide variety of international news stations because she's got a very compelling story. And I think that's one of the things about a lot of these candidates. They have a very compelling own personal story, which is very much not the norm in the Conservative brand. And that is very appealing. The thing with Kemi, whilst people say she may lack experience, a lot of the grassroots may actually do favour her. A lot of people who have said that they were voting for Tom Tugendhat have started to pull over to the Kemi camp. We've seen this with some of the other campaigns as well. And maybe this isn't her time, but maybe she may be, honing her skills in cabinet, in sort of the next cabinet, and then if there is another Conservative government in the next election, she then may have a more prominent profile. But at the end of the day, she has a very similar PR skills to the rest of the candidates, which is actually very poor at the moment. We've moved on from this David Cameron era of very slick style politics to something that's a bit more raw, and whether that will play out well in the next general election remains to be seen.
OK, Katie, Frank, thank you very much.
Except we all know who they are now, don't we? They've all done themselves favours from that point of view.
So right.
Thank you.
Now, as the extreme heat is continuing, you're being advised not to travel on trains today. Operators are running reduced services at speeds as slow as 20 miles per hour, track temperatures reaching more than 50 degrees Celsius.
Now, it's expected that the country will sail past the highest recorded temperature today. Let's go to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis. More on this.
Even the smallest relief from the heat can help, but travelling by train in a heat wave brings little joy. Much of the country is facing cancellations and crawling speeds. In Nottingham, at the heart of the red weather warning, passengers chance their luck.
I have delayed in Derby for 20 minutes, and now it's like I need to wait another 40.
I have to go to London via Nottingham instead of from Lincoln today because I've cancelled all the train services.
I think we're good. I should be heading off in about 15 minutes, so yeah, I'm the lucky one.
On East Midlands Railway's intercity routes, 2 trains an hour drops to 1. On some regional routes, the odds are much worse, and the East Coast Main Line from Leeds to London King's Cross has been scrapped altogether from midday. In extreme heat, tracks pass 50 degrees Celsius and can buckle at the normal speeds. Network Rail is advising you not to travel.
A lot of our infrastructure that we have is designed and maintained to operate safely around 38 degrees. So that 3 degrees further puts tremendous stress on the system.
How big of an impact could this have if you didn't bring in these measures?
The heat wave and these exceptional temperatures that we're going to encounter, particularly along the East Coast Main Line, means that the tracks themselves simply extend in the heat and become much longer, and there's a risk of them buckling, and that's why we need to slow down the train so that we don't create that risk and we maintain passengers' safety.
Soaring temperatures are pushing the UK up and over records. A red weather warning hangs over most of England. It's being described as an emergency with a risk to life. Last July, 1,600 people died because of heat, according to the Health and Security Agency.
We're going to see temperatures in the East Midlands of 39 and 40 degrees in various bits of the East Midlands. So that threshold of 25 degrees where people start to feel strain is going to be well exceeded. So we are expecting to see problems. Our monitoring of hot weather situations from previous years in the UK make it really clear that we get a lot of people becoming unwell and a good number of people dying when it gets this hot.
Back in Nottingham, the city centre's summer beach is returning. Trains are expected to run normally between Nottingham and Skegness, but at a time when travel is discouraged, skipping the seaside is becoming more tempting. Will Hollis for GB News in the East Midlands.
With the time at 6:16, let's bring you up to date on the latest news this hour. The government's won a vote of confidence in Parliament by 349 to 238. Labour had sought to hold a confidence vote to try to force Boris Johnson out sooner, but the government argued it was unnecessary because the Prime Minister has already said he'll go in September.
In his first speech as Chancellor, Nadhim Zahawi is expected to say that the government will get inflation under control. Later today, he will add that the country should be confident that the government can ease the cost of living pressure.
Metropolitan Police say a missing 14-year-old boy is believed to have drowned in the River Thames. Rescue efforts ended yesterday evening, but the search for the boy's body continued into the night. Police are urging everyone to take extra precautions after several similar deaths in rivers during the recent heatwave.
When you look at that young lad there, it is all so sad where people think, it always amazes me, there's a big trend about, is it called wild water swimming, or, people go into reservoirs and lakes and rivers and things, and it all seems to be, they love it. People who do it love it. But do you really want to go into something where you don't know what is under you? You actually don't know the depth of it, and you don't know.
Well, it's. I mean, that's the River Thames in Richmond where that boy lost his life. 14-year-old. There was also a drowning in a lake near Bray, near Maidenhead yesterday, and a whole series of these. And it's
a lad at Salford Quays as well.
It's just.
Well, it's the temptation. I mean, obviously, it is.
You want to get cool, don't you?
Yeah, you do want to get cool. Still to come. We'll take a break there at that stage. Boris Johnson surviving, as Isabel said, that confidence vote. We'll hear from the Ukrainian minister who praised the Prime Minister and the UK for their continued support.
That's after the all-important weather forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. 40 Celsius in some parts of the UK today, mid to high 30s for many, and that's why there's a red warning for extreme heat. These are unprecedented, record-breaking temperatures that could and very likely will cause impacts to health and to infrastructure. The heat has been moving our way across the whole of the UK during the last 24 hours, and it intensifies across southeast Scotland, northeast England, into central and eastern parts of England during the rest of the day. With clear skies, although with a bit of a breeze, those temperatures will be rising all day. Mid-30s by mid-morning, and then by the afternoon, mid to high 30s. 34 Celsius in southeast Scotland, Scotland's hottest day on record, and 40 Celsius for central and eastern England. Truly extraordinary temperatures could cause impacts for many. It will be cooler for southwest England as well as for parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. And that cool air is separated from the heat with an area of showers which will move east during Tuesday night into the start of Wednesday. And those showers, heavy at times, will pop up just about anywhere overnight. And although it's still a warm night, nowhere near as warm as it was last night. 18 or 19 Celsius in the south, 14, 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bright start for many on Wednesday. Still a few showers around, first thing across Wales and the southwest, central and eastern Scotland as well. And then by the afternoon, the focus for showers moves into the Midlands, northern England, eastern Scotland, and eventually East Anglia and the southeast. Could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. And still a hot day, nowhere near as hot, but still a hot day in the east, 30 Celsius. But I think further west, Scotland, Northern Ireland, high teens, and for much of England and Wales in the west, we're looking at low 20s. Back to more typical summer weather for the UK Thursday, Friday, sunny spells and showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory.
twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Tuesday morning. Good morning to you. Thank you for your company. Still to come on today's programme.
As Archie Battersby family continue to fight for him after doctors were told to stop providing life support, we'll be speaking to the parents of Charlie Gard. They're hoping their foundation and Charlie's Law will help support other families from enduring a similar pain. That's at 6:45.
And coming up also in the next hour, he's the man who was heavily critical of Boris Johnson during the Pincher scandal. Forest of Dean MP Mark Harper will be telling you why he is now backing Rishi Sunak for the top job and why he believes the former Chancellor will be a breath of fresh air. 7:45, your views on that.
And remember, you can get involved in any of our discussions. Email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews.
A senior Ukrainian government official has told us that he is confident Ukraine will continue to receive full support from the UK from whoever replaces Boris Johnson.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Volodymyr Harilov, says he's very touched by the high levels of support from all political parties and, importantly, he says, from British people.
Well, the Major General told our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, that Ukraine needs the West to send more advanced weapons.
In Ukraine's second city, this is what months of Russian bombardment does. In Kharkiv's largest residential neighbourhood, there's not a building that hasn't been damaged. Although the main battles are now being waged many miles from here in the Donbass and in the south, this war of attrition is being felt far and wide. But thanks to Western-supplied advanced weapon systems, Ukraine's Deputy Defence Minister told me his country's armed forces have largely halted Russian advances. And with more high-tech weaponry, they will, he believes, be able to retake lost territory.
Given the creativity of our commanders, together with technologies we receive from the West, I have no doubts we will crush this old-fashioned Russian army with the old Soviet-type style of offensive, and they have no chances in terms of technologies.
The minister told me his country would be forever grateful for the leadership shown by outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Whoever replaces him, the Ukrainians are confident they'll still have unwavering support from the UK's political leadership and, importantly, from the British people.
We feel that energy every day from ordinary people, from political parties and different organizations in society. So I'm very impressed with the reaction of United Kingdom, Great Britain.
At this training camp in northwest England, the first of at least 10,000 Ukrainian recruits are being put through their paces. The UK's former head of Special Forces says the programme is vital in helping replace Ukrainian combat losses. But those losses are, he says, being felt just as keenly by the Russians.
And to sustain those numbers, eventually they will need to mobilise, or perhaps they'll come up with a form of words as they have done for the war. They will need more men. They're fighting along a 500-mile plus front. That's the distance from here north of Edinburgh. It consumes manpower.
The Deputy Defence Minister says the Ukrainian people are in this fight for the long haul and there will be no surrender of Ukrainian territory to Moscow.
Civil society will never accept any kind of deal related to the loss of our territories. There will be no deal with Russia.
The Ukrainian people will be hoping whoever replaces Boris Johnson that they'll be just as unequivocal in their support for the fight against Russian aggression. Mark White, GB News.
With that, we'll hit the break, and then we'll take you through the newspapers on this Tuesday morning. Sam Lister and Martin Dobney doing that. Hope you can join us after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
News at 6:30. Let's bring you up to date.
Conservative MPs will vote again today to choose the final two candidates in the leadership race. It comes as Tom Tugendhat has been eliminated from it in the third round of voting. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak held on to first place and Penny Mordaunt took second.
The UK is expecting highest temperatures in recorded history today. Red extreme heat warnings have been issued for millions of people right across the country. Temperatures are forecast to hit at least 40 degrees this afternoon.
The government's expected to announce today that it's investing £11.5 billion into train services in the north of England. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says that the investment will address the historic imbalance in funding between the north and the south.
Papers now. We're in the company of Martin Dobney, who's the deputy leader of the Reclaim Party, and the deputy political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister. Very nice to see you both. How are you surviving the heat? You, Mr. Dobney, you look as if you've got a very good tan.
Yeah, well, I've been frequenting some pub beer gardens. It's the best place to be. I'm enjoying the heat. I mean, I'm old enough to remember 1976, and we lived through that, and we'll live through this. And I think one of the things that kind of gets me down is just look at the news cycle about how it's just like the end of the planet. We're all going to die. It's like, no, we're not. It's just a bit of hot weather, and we'll deal with that because humans are amazing. And when the winter comes, we'll all be saying it's too cold.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Sam, though, there are fires in France, there are fires throughout Europe, Portugal, Spain, whatever. But apparently the weather phenomenon, it's a dome. There's something called a dome, which holds in the hot air. And that's why it's so burny. See, what I want to know is you never hear. We used to hear about the ozone layer. No one talks about the ozone layer. We don't hear anymore. So are we all being killed by radiation? Are we being sucked closer to the sun? What exactly? So something's happening Just tell us, you know, I just wanted these experts to tell us what is happening.
I don't know, but it's too hot for me. I can't cope. It's unbearable. And I would say, as a Yorkshire woman, you know, this is not my weather. But then I read in the Daily Telegraph that my hometown of Doncaster in South Yorkshire is going to be one of the places that hits 40 degrees today. And I'm quite surprised by that. But what we do know, whether you like the hot weather or not, what we do know is it is causing chaos. And we've even got RAF Bryce Norton. Now, you would hope an RAF base was able to cope with this weather. That's got, melting
runway
surface, the East Coast Main Line, I travelled down on that yesterday morning. I was on one of the last trains down yesterday morning from York. That's been shut down completely this afternoon because the rails cannot cope. So whether you like it or not,
that would connect you right up into Yorkshire and beyond into Northumbria and then up to Scotland.
Up to Scotland,
I'm not so sure about
down
that.
This afternoon.
No, because on the underground in London, it's Ramo, but it's because the drivers aren't turning up. You know, it's not necessarily just about buckling rails and you can't operate the trains at all. We've turned into a work-shy country, I think. You know, like yesterday in London, it was empty. Like, nobody turned up to work.
Martin, I couldn't agree with you more, and that is what concerns me. When I get up in the morning, I think, what is there to look forward to? What is happening to our country? What is happening to the world? I was in Guernsey last week, right? Lovely food, lovely restaurants, lovely hotels, everything. No staff.
Yeah.
Nobody has staff. Restaurants closing down.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, there used to be, like, they would send to the schools and things leaflets. Do you want a tomato pick in Guernsey during the summer? Or do you want a potato pick? Or do you want to work in the hospitality industry? Where have all these people gone? What is it with the psyche of our young nowadays, or just people in general? They don't want to work.
Well, I think lots of people have got used to being paid to not work. Lots of people have got quite used and quite like the idea of kind of sitting around at home, working from home, or the government funding their lifestyle of leisure. And I think that's given people an unfortunate taste for laziness. I really do.
I think there's a difference between people working from home and people sitting around indulging in leisure. I mean, plenty of people who work from home are doing just that, working from home, running their own businesses and also juggling lots of other things as well. I think there's a totally valid point that you make, Eamonn, and you see it in hotels when you can't get staff there, you see it in restaurants, you see it all over the place, and there is a big problem, and obviously lots of questions about whether or not that's to do with problems getting visas, people coming into this country to work, whatever it might be. Why British people don't want to do those jobs, as you say, it's a mystery.
And a very valid point from you, fellow colleague, as well. But I just wonder, I'm only being mischievous here, how many of those people on the scenes from the beaches yesterday were working from home?
Right.
I just wonder.
Wi-Fiing on the beach.
What about Boris Johnson? Is he doing any work? This is an article in The Guardian that you've chosen, Martin, saying he's been accused of checking out as Britain swelters.
Yeah, I mean, it will come as no surprise to anybody on the planet that Boris Johnson is responsible for everything bad, if you read The Guardian. An asteroid could collide into the planet tomorrow, and the Guardian will blame Boris Johnson. And it's hot, and they're blaming Boris Johnson for not going to the Cobra meeting. He went to the Farnborough Air Show. Some might say, wise choice. He's out of a job. He's been stabbed in the back by his colleagues. He's been absolutely shafted, and he's, I think, already in the airlock. He's out of his job. The fact of the matter is, if Boris had attended a meeting tomorrow, and by the way, I'm no Boris Johnson fan. I'm not a Conservative. But if he had attended that meeting yesterday, would it be any cooler today?
No.
I put it to you, no, it wouldn't.
Sam, we go to you in that political editor role that you have. This leadership battle. I was saying to Isabel earlier, it's the best game show on telly. It is the best game show on telly, except it won't be on telly tonight.
Yeah.
No, they pulled out of the debate that was going to go ahead tonight. I think after Sunday's debate, and because they were all taking pot shots out of each other, it was incredibly damaging. And apparently Rishi Sunak said at the end of the debate to Liz Truss, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
What are we doing to the party?
What has he got to fear by having lumps taken out of him?
I think it's not so much that about him getting through to the next round, because it looks like he's pretty much almost certain to make it through to the final two. But how does he rebuild the party after all this damage? Would he
and Liz Truss work together in a future government?
It's difficult to see it, isn't it? Because they've made very public attacks on each other's positions. So Liz Truss is attacking his position as his former Chancellor. He's saying she's doing fairy tale economics. It's very hard to see how
But he can't drop her from a cabinet,
exactly.
can he?
But how do you rebuild a party and present that to the country and say, look, we are a serious, united party.
A much better thing for Rishi Sunak or for Liz Truss to do would be to come and do an interview with us here on GB News. In fact, we extended our arms out to both of them yesterday. We would love to have either of you come and sit with Eamonn and I in here, because at the end of the day, you're going to have direct access to Conservative membership and Red Wall voters, both of whom will hold the keys to your future. So you might want to do the debates. Come on our show and we'll happily do a
individually, it has to be said. What was I going to say to you? I've forgotten what I was going to say to you. Isabel was so eloquent.
I was just trying to get them on the show.
Something else. Yeah, no, but absolutely fair point. Absolutely very, very good, because I think, what do you think the look is when they say we're not going to take part in this debate?
Well, I think, we saw Friday's debate, we saw Sunday's debate. We know where everybody is and everything, so why put yourself through that pain? It just makes sense. But I think Isabel's got a great point, actually come and talk to Red Wall voters directly. And actually, I think the Red Wall is a big problem for all of the candidates. Yeah. Boris Johnson was the person who won those Red Wall votes. None of these candidates are obvious candidates to win over those people again. I think, talking to people who watch GB News is a good way to do that.
I think you can see why Sky were furious, but in terms of the campaigns that they were running, who was standing to gain from that? Penny Mordaunt, Kemi Badenoch and Tom Tugendhat in that instance, because they were getting all this extra publicity.
I think the Conservative candidates are learning what we as Brexiteers learned a few years ago. No, you don't get a fair hearing on Sky News anymore. You just don't. You get slaughtered. Now, the entire editorial standards are against the Conservative Party, against all they stand for, and they will just put themselves into a wrecking ball scenario. And why would you want to do that? If you look at what's been used on social media from the interviews so far, it's the Labour Party clipping the worst bits and making montages. So it's being used as an attack vehicle on the candidates themselves. So in the end, I think they've made the right decision, because they're not speaking to their electorate. What Conservative voters watch Sky News anymore? You used to work on Sky News, and I was there with you.
They are all watching us.
It was a
if our inbox is anything to go by.
Fair broadcasting channel. It's not anymore.
Wow.
It's not. And that's why I think they've made the right choice. Same as Channel 4. They hate Brexit. They hate the Conservatives.
The ownership, of course, is. Yeah, but the ownership has changed. Which may affect. I mean, we can only speak for when we were there, and we never had any interference. Or
it was a fair, free broadcasting channel. And we could talk about things openly, couldn't we? And now they clearly despise the Conservative Party and Brexit.
Just a point that Sam was making there about who's going to cut through into the red wall. I just want to know from you don't think there's anybody there that you see, Sam?
I don't think there's an obvious person. I think they're going to have to work really hard to win that support from Boris Johnson's vote.
Who's standing out for you?
So the people that I really respect in the Conservative Party, people like Lee Anderson, Ben Bradley, the sort of Nottinghamshire lads, they're all backing Kemi. I think Kemi is a fantastic candidate. She'd be bad news for the Reclaim Party, because she likes a lot of things that we like. She's very critical about critical race theory, about gender-neutral toilets, net zero, the things that people really care about. I think she'd be a great candidate. Rishi is the best person for us, because he'd
the most capable, you mean?
No, he would be very easy to attack on doorsteps. He's an entitled millionaire whose wife dodges tax. That'd be a great thing to attack on the doorstep.
But he seems like a nice man.
Apart from that.
The personality, I mean, I do think, I don't know what you think, Isabel, but I do think at the end of the day, people, when they look, I know these are not presidential elections or anything, but they look at leaders and they think, I like her, I like him.
I think Liz Truss's biggest problem is going to be to persuade people that she has that warmth and personability, and I think she might suffer a little bit from the Theresa May syndrome of being just quite hard to watch and a bit awkward on television, even though there's no question she's obviously a very hard-working and capable woman.
Yeah, I think, she herself acknowledges that she's not the best, the most slickest of the presenters, the people presenting themselves to the country at the moment. But she has got the kind of one of the strongest records. She's got a lot of cabinet minister support. She's got Ian Duncan-Smith, the former party leader, behind her. So people do think she is a serious candidate, but she's not a naturally great performer on TV.
OK. Martin, let's talk about strikes. I mean, you mentioned there about tube drivers not turning up. This is front page of the Times. New strike threat over pay deals for the public sector. Those are going to be announced today, as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, here we go again. It's like we've already seen rail strikes, and now the teaching unions and the rail unions and the nursing unions are threatening to do a walkout because they're only being given a 4 to 5% pay rise for the highest earners. It's actually an 8 to 9% pay rise for some of the lower earners, because they're saying that's being outstripped by inflation, which of course it is. But I would say to you, show me a private sector worker that's getting a 5% pay rise this year. I don't know anyone who's getting a pay rise this year. And so I just think we're in danger of being choked by the unions. You know, I'm a coal miner's lad. I remember what the unions did. And I just think we need to really take control of this situation, because we don't have endless money. We've burned like £1 trillion during the pandemic. And once again, we're being held to ransom by the unions. And it has horrible echoes for me of the 70s and 80s, and the government needs to grow a pair and say no. That's what I think.
OK, fair enough. Sam, let's talk about Boris Johnson again. This is in the Express. He's been defending his political legacy, and I suppose, you know, lots of suspicion that it is his last cabinet meeting today, but there was a fear that his appearance in the Commons yesterday might be his last. The Speaker of the Commons haranguing him quietly as he walked out yesterday, saying, "You will be at PMQs tomorrow," and Boris Johnson sort of shrugging, saying, "Yes, I'll be there," because he'd made those obscure comments last week, hadn't he?
Yeah.
Hinting that he might not, or he might be off on a foreign trip or something. But lots of talk now about his legacy and the end of an era. So what's the Express saying about it all?
Yeah, I watched his performance yesterday in the Commons, and it was a very rowdy session, very kind of lots of Labour MPs shouting, but actually a lot of the Tory front bench shouting back. Nadine Dorries was shouting at Keir Starmer, "You're boring," and it was very, very rowdy in there. But Boris Johnson, he kind of did his greatest hits. He did a long list of all his achievements. He said, "I've kept every promise I've made to voters." Lots of people will dispute that, but he said, look, you know, I've delivered Brexit, I got us through the pandemic, I got the big calls right. And so it was certainly him kind of putting down on the record his version of how his premiership has gone. And obviously, you know, lots of people dispute that. Sir Keir Starmer did dispute that. Mm-hmm. But again, he was struggling to kind of cut through Sir Keir in the Commons chamber. It was such a rowdy session, and Boris Johnson really does have such a commanding presence that it's quite difficult for Keir Starmer to really get in there.
Who doesn't have any presence.
Not for me to say.
Yeah,
Do you find yourself looking on the front bench, though, at some of the hopeful prime ministers and seeing if they're looking and watching Boris Johnson at the dispatch box thinking, I'm not sure if I can do this in the same sort of way?
No, I do not. I was watching Liz Truss. She was right behind him.
I was thinking that.
Yes, she was saying, I'll get myself in the picture. He's
I
right.
think she was thinking, I'll never be as dynamic or interesting. I mean, the number of metaphors that he used relating to Top Gun and the air show and, you know, the thrust and this, that and the other. He was hilarious.
Yeah, but the other thing about Boris Johnson is he was also lucky, Martin.
Yeah.
He was lucky in so many ways. He was lucky he was up against Jeremy Corbyn, for instance, right at
and he was handed Brexit on a plate by Nigel Farage. You know, let's face it. That election was the Brexit election. He swept in, and we weren't even sure if he was actually a Brexit.
So just to explain this, Nigel Farage, as far as I understand it, didn't put candidates in seats that the Conservatives were contesting.
Yeah, I don't mean they was handed in that sense. I mean that election was entirely about Brexit.
Yeah.
And get Brexit done. It's just a hugely compelling, you know, sort of soundbite, and that's what it became. I campaigned in that election. I lost heavily in that election, and I knew we were going to lose because, you know, the Conservatives are amazing at getting power, and that will be Boris's legacy. I think he'll be quite happy outside of politics.
I think he will.
I totally agree with you. We'll never see the end of him. He'll be on every TV panel show.
And he'll be no longer impoverished.
He'll get a documentary about Churchill. He'll probably do a Michael Portillo on trains.
Yeah.
You know, Dancing on Ice. He'll be on Strictly.
Might have some more children. Who knows?
Yeah. So, it's not the end we're going to hear of him. Net zero in the Eye, page 11 here. Badenoch joins contenders in 2050 net zero pledge.
Yeah, it was a really interesting part of Kemi's pitch to the nation, which I wholeheartedly support, and that is net zero by 2050 is incredibly punishing, especially for the working classes who can least afford to do things like upgrade their boilers, soaring energy bills, and these arbitrary goals that have been set.
But it's more than 25 years away.
Yeah, but you're paying every year until then, and that's the point. It's going to be an escalating cost. And so being tied to the zealotry of climate change when the reality is choosing to heat or eat this winter. We're in a heat wave now. We'll freeze in the winter.
I do have to correct you to call it the zealotry of climate change. I mean, there is scientific consensus. I mean, climate change is widely I mean, it's not even debated anymore.
The climate is changing. The point is, what's the government's reaction?
Well, yes, exactly.
To tax
and all
the
of the
poor
candidates made the
is
point
unfair.
that you have to think about your children and your grandchildren, and it can't just be about the short term. Yes,
it can be about the short term if you're freezing to death in the winter because you can't afford to heat your house. And that's the point that Kemi made. Now, it looks like she's rowing back on this because it's gone down quite badly with the head honchos in the party who are, don't forget, it was a manifesto pledge of the Tories to commit to net zero by 2050. Yeah. I think it's ruinous. It's going to wreck the working classes, and we should be excavating shale.
Do you know? I have to say, I say this against myself because I agree with Isabel. Something's got to be done. However, I was sitting yesterday sweltering, and I thought, Britain, UK, British Isles, small area, very, very small area. Why are we beating ourselves up that this is all our fault, that this is happening? It's not our fault. It's China's fault, it's Russia's fault, it's Brazil's fault.
India.
It is India's fault. It is countries far more massive, with bigger, huge populations than us, and yet we think an island of 66 million people is going to turn it all around.
Amen to that, Eamonn.
Well, I do think, forgive me, I know that sounds depressing, but I just sort of thought we are a pimple on the backside of humanity, really, and we're not, but we are.
The quote of the morning.
we are
but a pimple. We should lance that boil.
Well, I mean, I think until China really do step up their game, you know, us washing our yoghurt pots out and turning the heating down 100 degrees, really not going to be enough to sort this out, is it? But I think it's only by Britain leading that others will follow. So I think there is an argument there that we have to do our bit, but actually it has to be done fairly, doesn't it? And so, as Martin says, you know, you can't punish the working classes for a global issue. It's just not. It's not on, and that's going to be quite a.
Well, look, you'll have got people talking, guys.
I could shove your net zero.
Right, what have you got?
Go on.
That's just come in. It doesn't have a name. It says from Pasty or Pasty 901. Your commentator, Martin, is spot on this morning. Appreciating GB News so much. This is from Marguerite. She says, me again, sorry, but so much sense being spoken this morning about the unions. Anyway, just lots of love. Congratulations. Great paper review. So lots of appreciation.
There we go.
You two can come back, and they're going to be back, folks, in 40 minutes' time. Listen to them and watch them here on Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel. With the time at 12 minutes before 7, let's bring you up to date.
So the government has won a vote of confidence in Parliament by 349 to 238. Labour had sought to hold the vote to try to force Boris Johnson out sooner, but the government argued it was unnecessary because the Prime Minister's already said he'll go in September.
In his first speech as Chancellor, Nadhim Zahawi is expected to say that the government will get inflation under control. He will add that the country should be confident that the government can ease the cost of living crisis.
The government's expected to announce today that it's investing £11.5 billion into train services in the north of England. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, says that the investment will address the historic imbalance in funding between the north and the south.
Now, a story that's quite personal to us is that of the young boy Archie Battersby, whose mum was here in the studio not so long ago, and she will continue to fight for him despite a court ruling that would allow doctors to switch off life support.
Well, as that appeal process comes to a conclusion, GB News has caught up with two parents who went through a similar ordeal to Archie's family. That is the parents Connie Yates and Chris Gard. You may remember them as the parents of Charlie Gard, who died in 2017. Our reporter, Rosie Wright, went to meet them.
It's been 5 years since Charlie Gard passed away, just 1 week before his first birthday. His death came after the Royal Court of Justice ruled against extending Charlie's treatment for a rare condition which affected his brain and muscles. GB News spoke to his parents, who've since had a second son, Oliver, who's almost 2.
We're going down to London next week for his 5-year anniversary of his passing. So we always go to his grave and release butterflies. So we'll still be doing the same thing, won't we? But you know, it's coming up 5 years now, but it's not any easier really. You know, you sort of learn to live with it, but you know how time's normally a healer. I think when you lose a child, time doesn't really help that much. But I just feel like he's sort of around us. Do you know what I mean? Sort of with us in a way.
Save Charlie Gard! Save Charlie!
The support we had during Charlie's case was phenomenal. You know, if it wasn't for the donations of the general public, we would never have had the even opportunity of going to America. And unfortunately, that was blocked by the hospital and the courts. But you know, we set up the Charlie Gard Foundation after his passing, and you know, we get a lot of support through that. So you know, we always feel very touched that he, you know, touched so many lives around the world.
Connie and Chris have just won a landmark victory, determined that other parents won't face the same experience as them.
The main point of Charlie's Law is to stop these cases getting to the point of having to go to court, because it's bad enough when you've got a sick child, and to be then taken to court at the same time to try and fight for your child's life is just unbearable. So anything we can do through Charlie's Law to stop these cases escalating to court is the main aim, really, whether that be mediation or, you know, just making sure that the parents' voices are properly considered and listened to.
It's a much bigger problem than people realise, and it costs the government or the millions of pounds in court cases.
Another family who are currently facing a similar battle to keep their child on life support are the parents of Archie Battersby. Archie's 12. He's been on life support in England since April after doctors declared that he was brain stem dead. The courts have ruled that his life support should now be switched off. His parents are fighting this decision. Well, Charlie Gard's parents empathise.
We've been there, we know how it feels. And all I can say, you know, is our thoughts are with Archie and his family. It's devastating for everyone involved. And there's nothing I can really say that's going to make them feel any better. You know, losing a child under any circumstances is just dreadful. But, you know, our thoughts are with Archie and his family at this time.
MPs will now debate Charlie's Law in Parliament. If it comes to pass, then parents may not have to go to court and can use mediators to work out what's best for their children.
Very, very difficult situation, that, and incredibly hard for any parents. Our heart goes out to all involved, really.
Yeah, really, really, really sad to be in that situation and have to make those decisions there. Right.
Have you ever been to a wedding that's not been in a church or in a civil ceremony, and then they had to go off and have a sort of legal ceremony separately?
No.
My brother had a humanist wedding a few years ago under a tree, beautiful oak tree. It was stunning.
But does that not make it...
But it wasn't lawful.
Really?
Yeah, so he then had to invite the registrars in and do a separate ceremony.
I know a couple of people that may not be living in sin now as a result.
Not anymore. The rules have changed from today. So the rules were relaxed during COVID just to try and make it easier, because obviously there were lots of restrictions in place, and they decided, you know what, might keep these rules. So let us know if you're one of those people. It's going to have financial implications as well. People can get married in their back gardens, which obviously costs a lot less than some of the more expensive venues that people are restricted to use. But essentially you can get married under a tree, you can get married on a beach, which is kind of commonplace in a lot of other countries.
Yes, and when you think about it, why not?
It's much more meaningful to people, I think. And I have to say, my brother's wedding was one of the most beautiful weddings I've ever been to.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
Lots of tears.
Because it's a ceremony of love then, where I suppose if you're in a church, I mean, not that I'm doing down churches at all, I suppose it's more of a sacrament, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I had a church wedding, and I would have a church wedding, you know, if I had my time again, because that was what I wanted. And
I was at your church
You were at
wedding.
my church. You were very late, actually. You were the last. I actually thought you weren't there. As I walked down the aisle, I couldn't see you.
It was in the middle of nowhere.
And I thought, oh, he hasn't come and come to my wedding.
I got lost.
No, you just wanted everyone to turn and look at you as you walked in with Ruthie.
Well, Ruthie and I were having an argument in a car park.
Well, why doesn't that surprise
Because she blamed me. I was, for some reason, I think we had a car without sat-nav, and I was on a map, and there's actually a picture of me with a map out over the bonnet. But I mean, when you're in the back end of nowhere.
It wasn't. It was in Sutton Place in Surrey, and it was lovely.
You said to me, it's only 15 minutes from your house, but it was the longest journey that I've ever had.
Wow.
But my present wife and I got married in the hottest day, on the hottest day of the year. I mean, I remember on the morning having to literally go to B&Q and buy 10 aircon
That's very
units
stressful
for the
for the flowers and everything.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't want to add to her stress. No, not at all. Actually, she wasn't really stressful. She knew she was blessed. She knew she was happy.
Too blessed to be stressed.
Too blessed to be stressed. Wedding dilemma. So you can do it anywhere. So you literally, I could do it. I could get married at Old Trafford now.
Yeah, Old Trafford, on a beach, under a tree, wherever you want.
Wherever you want
Let
to
us
be.
know if that's you.
Very
Love
good.
to hear your story.
Okay, hot stories, hot weather, all to come after your weather update.
Hello, good morning. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. 40 Celsius in some parts of the UK today, mid to high 30s for many, and that's why there's a red warning for extreme heat. These are unprecedented, record-breaking temperatures that could and very likely will cause impacts to health and to infrastructure. The heat has been moving our way across the whole of the UK during the last 24 hours, and it intensifies across southeast Scotland, northeast England, into central and eastern parts of England during the rest of the day. With clear skies, although with a bit of a breeze, those temperatures will be rising all day. Mid-30s by mid-morning, and then by the afternoon, mid to high 30s. 34 Celsius in southeast Scotland, Scotland's hottest day on record, and 38 to 40 Celsius for central and eastern England. Truly extraordinary temperatures could cause impacts for many. It will be cooler for southwest England as well as for parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. And that cool air is separated from the heat with an area of showers which will move east during Tuesday night into the start of Wednesday. And those showers, heavy at times, will pop up just about anywhere overnight. And although it's still a warm night, nowhere near as warm as it was last night. 18 or 19 Celsius in the south, 14, 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bright start for many on Wednesday. Still a few showers around, first thing across Wales and the southwest, central and eastern Scotland as well. And then by the afternoon, the focus for showers moves into the Midlands, northern England, eastern Scotland, and eventually East Anglia and the southeast. Could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. And still a hot day, nowhere near as hot, but still a hot day in the east, 30 Celsius. But I think further west, Scotland, Northern Ireland, high teens, and for much of England and Wales in the west, we're looking at low 20s. Back to more typical summer weather for the UK Thursday, Friday, sunny spells and showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Tom Tugendhat is knocked out of the Tory leadership contest with 4 candidates remaining.
Hello there, very good morning to you, very nice to see you. The time, 7 o'clock on this Tuesday, the 19th of July. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss and Kemi Badenoch are the final 4 contestants left in the Tory leadership contest. Another round of voting will take place this afternoon.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson is going to hold his final cabinet meeting at number 10. Conservative MPs have backed his government in a confidence vote, giving him 7 more weeks in Downing Street before handing over to whoever his successor will be.
The UK will experience its hottest day on record today, with some temperatures reaching up to 42 degrees Celsius. The Met Office has issued an extreme heat warning, with Network Rail discouraging people from making unnecessary journeys.
And Prince Harry has delivered a speech to the United Nations in New York. The Duke of Sussex spoke about abortion, climate change, and the war in Ukraine.
As always, we love to hear from you. Get involved in the conversation. Send us your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews.
Now, the whole temperature thing. Sheila, good morning, Sheila. Sheila says, unfortunately, I witnessed a few people walking dogs when it was 38 degrees outside yesterday afternoon. Poor dogs panting heavily. I couldn't help myself and give them an earful. And I think that's fair enough, Sheila. But then I talk about stupid people. And no, stupid people to walk their dogs at that time. The dog's paws burning, cat's paws burning. We hear about the tarmac melting at Luton Airport and Bryce Norton as well. But I had a friend yesterday who was walking her dog by a riverbank yesterday at 6 a.m.
Very nice time of day.
And this Egypt started shouting at her.
That's not okay.
No, that's not okay.
No.
Because that's obviously a Fruit Loop.
Yeah.
That's obviously someone who doesn't understand the dog needs to get out to do its
I don't think we
business.
shout at people in the street, do we? I'm sorry, Sheila. I'm not really into that.
No, but it's not. Well, she cares about the dogs.
No, I know.
But see, Sheila has a point. It's like if you saw a dog locked up in a car.
Well,
you
on
would.
that, I
Yes.
don't know if you've ever gone onto Twitter and looked up 999 London. Long story why I went on there this morning, but I had a little look on the Twitter and it had a whole series of tweets from different police forces saying that it had to rescue dogs from cars.
And your pussy as well.
My parents' cat
Yes.
climbed into my car again. I was very worried about that. So,
It climbed into the car through an open window.
Yeah, and was there for hours.
You were worried that you had just fried
I thought
it.
I'd trapped him in there.
Yeah.
But
No. But anyway, I mean, listen, folks who've got pets and things, you know, they'll be out and about, and that's what they do before the temperature really gets up. But walking an animal at 38 degrees, no, you are just stupid. Right, now let's get to the news. The Tory leadership contenders will be whittled down to 3 today. MPs set to cast their votes. It is the 4th round of this fantastic game show.
It comes as the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Tom Tugendhat, was eliminated last night after receiving the fewest votes.
Now, the former Chancellor, Rishi, he held on to first place, 115 votes for him.
Yeah, just 5 short of the threshold to guarantee him a place. It looks like he's really solidified his position. Meanwhile, the Trade Minister, Penny Mordaunt, took 2nd place, with Foreign Secretary Liz Truss in 3rd and Ex-Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch in 4th. The final 2 candidates will then be decided tomorrow.
So it's... Well,
getting dramatic. It's the game show.
It is.
It's the introduction.
Right, so for more on this, political consultant Katie Frank is in the studio again. Very good to see you, Katie. And also, we've got the deputy editor of Spiked, and that is Fraser Myers. Fraser, I mean, I'm calling it a game show, and it is because, you know, in themselves, they're not huge personalities. You might as well have members of the public in there. These folk are supposed to be engaging us. They're supposed to be top pros and whatever. Are they setting you alight?
No, not really. I mean, you tune into the debates and you hear them just sort of spouting mindless slogans. You know, some of them are really very bland, you know, talking about trusted for delivery, a clean start. Some of them sound more like they're advertising dry cleaning companies than pitching to be the leader
What
of
you're
the country.
saying is no detail about certain things.
No detail, no vision, no clear set of ideas.
I want to hear them saying, we're going to fix the GP situation. We're going to get...
Immigration. We haven't even touched on that
I
subject.
haven't touched on that, yeah. I mean, too hot to handle?
There's a lot of agreement across them. There's not enough debate. I mean, when there have been kind of, you know, a semblance of debate, it's been quite personal, it's been quite catty. You know, we've talked a lot about Liz Truss's Lib Dem past, or people, you know, having a go at Sunak's wife's tax affairs, but that's not really the substance of this. And even when there are differences on the economy, you know, they're only talking about tax cuts now, tax cuts later. not really getting to grips with the fundamental problems affecting the economy. They're not talking about how they're going to deal with the energy crisis or things like that. So, yeah, what we need is some more substance.
On the tax cuts issue, though, I just want to bring that up because this has, as you say, pretty much been the only subject of debate, really, besides the personal tax. The IMF chief has come out today and they have said vows to cut taxes at this stage is a mistake. So they now lend their voice to the chorus that comes from the Office for Budget Responsibility. We've had former chancellors coming out saying the same, all essentially agreeing with either Kemi Badenoch or Rishi Sunak on this. So why then is it still so much the case that there is support for what Liz Truss is calling for, these cuts to taxes, and also Penny Mordaunt, although she hasn't really thrashed out or fleshed out her economic plans?
Yeah, I mean, it's not some great mystery why the UK has the highest tax burden since the 1970s. It's because the economy isn't growing. It's not because, you know, the current Tory government loves putting up taxes. They would rather be slashing them, I'm sure. But there is...
There's this whole, sorry, Fraser, there's this whole area that people don't talk about. I know you mentioned that. Oh, they don't like putting up taxes. Do you know what they're doing under George Osborne? They then creep into everybody's past and they're looking in retrospective tax. The amount of people that are being hit by the loan charge situation, IR35, and nobody talks about this.
Or they let people, you know, fall into different tax bands by not increasing those with inflation and things like that, and you have a huge amount of fiscal drag. But they would love to, if they... In terms of what they'd like to be saying is that we're cutting tax. You know, that seems to be what the Tory membership wants to hear.
I want to know from Katie Frank. Katie's a political consultant. Will they have to change their tune on this? Well, the thing is, we haven't got another big debate tonight. They've all chickened out of that, or certainly two of them have chickened out of that. But Fraser makes a very, very good point here. They're talking rubbish, basically, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they're talking in a lot of meaningless platitudes because they don't want to get into the depth of policy because that will come to bite them later. And also, the issue is they're walking a very fine tightrope at the moment. They still have to win the votes of their colleagues, the members of Parliament. And the members of Parliament do not reflect necessarily the grassroots of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
The grassroots of the Conservative Party certainly are more socially conservative than a lot of the members of Parliament. This is why there has been the attack on Penny Mordaunt around gender issues, sexist issues, etc. It isn't for no reason. This is very tactical. And the fact, coming back to the tax policy, for instance, this plays well with the base. Now, whether it's reality or not is another question.
Yes.
And the issue is that Labour are just going to smack a lot of these things on their leaflets at the next election and say, what, in all of over a decade, have the Conservative Party achieved?
When we go back to Just Call Me Dave days, right, Cameron, he was all for hugging people and all this sort of thing. You know, it was all nonsense because it never materialised when he... I remember him saying that he would cycle to number 10, all this not have security. I mean, that was what he was saying initially, you know, all rubbish. But who speaks for politically progressive Conservatives? And those would be, I suppose a lot of them are more likely to be young. I mean, you were talking about the core vote being conservative. Who speaks for the progressive wing of the party?
So the Conservative...
Or is there a progressive wing of the party?
There is. The Conservative Party is a very broad church, just like the Labour Party is, although the Labour Party seem to want to distance some of its wing under Jeremy Corbyn as well. And there are a lot of young voters. I wouldn't necessarily say in the Conservative Party they're all acting as one particular bloc, for instance, and they never had. For instance, a lot of them under the leadership race between David Cameron, when he was elected, they didn't vote for David Cameron. They voted for David Davis. But you have seen this move towards more friendly policies in their eyes towards the LGBT community, etc. And you've seen a lot of the youth wing of the grassroots not reacting entirely well to the likes of Liz Truss, etc., and even Kemi potentially on the trans issue. In fact, the faction in the Conservatives called the LGBT Tories have been really hammering the candidates over this, and this hasn't gone unnoticed by a lot of the grassroots. However, the Conservative Party membership, like a lot of the other political party membership, is still older. It's still more socially conservative, etc. And they have a disproportionate balance in that. So I'm not sure it would entirely sway a vote if a progressive candidate were to come in, and in fact, how ruthless these campaigns have been, unless someone who's squeaky clean and has always adhered to those values.
I just want to get one final thought from you, Fraser, and this, I suppose, is really the business end now of this leadership contest. Lots of horse trading will be going on behind the scenes, vying for cabinet positions, trying to win the votes of Tom Tugendhat. Interesting how everybody was bending over backwards to try and praise him after he got knocked out yesterday from all wings of the contest. Indeed, bids from, I think, Liz Truss today making a commitment to put 3% of GDP towards defence by 2030, a clear overture to some of his military supporters, I suppose. So what can we expect then, do you think, in terms of people vying for future positions of Chancellor or whatever it might be?
Well, firstly, I'm relieved to see the back of Tom Tugendhat. I don't think there's a country that he wouldn't want to start a war with, but that's that's another matter. I think, the problem with the horse trading is that it means that probably the membership and the country more broadly won't get what they want. So clearly the grassroots like someone like Kemi Badenoch, but it's quite likely that she might fall out of the race later this afternoon, which would be a real shame because she's one of the few.
Potentially get a key position in any future cabinet, perhaps under Rishi Sunak, because they do seem quite aligned, particularly fiscally.
I think almost certainly. I think pretty much everyone, maybe apart from Penny Mordaunt, who's shown herself to be a bit of a fantasist and has been attacked for her competence so much over the past few weeks. I think almost certainly each of them has raised their profile to such an extent that they, if they were in a junior role, they'll probably be getting a senior role.
Fraser, who would be the best of a bad bunch for you?
I think Kemi would be the best. I think she's the only kind of insurgent candidate.
But,
I think the rest of them
the
are
system
kind of
means she ain't going to get there, you think?
Of course.
She might make it. It really does seem as though Liz Truss and Penny Mordaunt haven't done well enough to guarantee their place in the final two yet. It all depends what happens in the next 24 hours.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how, so many kind of grandees, especially representing the Tory right, have told MPs, back Liz Truss, drop Kemi. Kemi's been told to drop out so many times. She's not dropping out. People are not falling in line behind Liz Truss. So maybe there could be a surprise, but,
OK. Guys, really interesting to hear from both of you. Fraser Myers is the Deputy Editor of Spiked, and Katie Frank is a political consultant. Thank you very much indeed for both your views. The time, 13 minutes past 7 o'clock.
Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. The government last night survived a vote of confidence in Parliament by 349 votes to 238. Labour had sought to hold the vote to try and force Boris Johnson out sooner, but the government argued it was unnecessary because the Prime Minister's already committed to going in September.
Unions have warned the government against giving public sector workers a pay rise below the rate of inflation. An announcement is expected later today on pay rises for public sector workers, including nurses, teachers and doctors. There's speculation the offers will be around 5%, which the unions argue is less than half the current rate of inflation.
The government's expected to announce today it's investing £11.5 billion into train services in the north of England. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the investment will address the historic imbalance in funding between the north and the south.
You don't need me to tell you it was hot yesterday. It was hot. 38 degrees yesterday. Today it could hit
42 degrees. I got in the paddling pool in the garden yesterday. I was so desperate. Yeah, awful. So it was the hottest day on record in the UK for many places, and we're just asking this morning, how are you coping with the heat?
OK, well, let's go to our reporter, Ellie Costello.
Doesn't need a paddling pool.
Well, a Lido. That's a big paddling pool, that one. Where are you, Ellie? Where is that one?
Well, good morning to you both. I'm at London Fields Lido here in Hackney this morning, and I hate to state the obvious, but it is really, really hot out here. 25 degrees already. It is just gone 7 a.m. and those temperatures are just going to keep on rising today. And you can see just how many people are already in the Lido here this morning. We were here at 6 o'clock and there was a queue out of the door, people trying to get cool in this lovely water here. And there is that red weather warning today, up to 42 degrees in some parts of the country. So do make sure that you're staying hydrated and wearing your sun cream today. Many people last night, if you're watching on the TV or you're listening on the radio, you may have struggled to sleep. And if you did, well, it's not really any surprise because it was mid-20s in many parts of the country overnight last night. I certainly didn't sleep. And yesterday was the third hottest day on record, 38.1 degrees in Suffolk. So really hot out there, and it's only going to get hotter today. So let's speak to somebody who has been enjoying this lovely cool water here this morning. This is Carol. Carol, thank you so much for speaking to us on GB News, on your TV and your radio. How was your swim this morning? Because we had our eyes on you. You knew what you were about to do. You were here nice and early, jumping in the water. Was it nice and refreshing, or was it a bit too hot in there?
It was gorgeous. It was lovely and refreshing.
And you are a keen swimmer, aren't you? You swim every day?
Pretty much every day,
yeah. So today, obviously, we've got that red weather warning. What's your plan for today? You're going to be out in the sunshine, or are you going to be heeding the advice and staying inside?
I'm certainly going to be heeding the advice. I'm going to be working from home in a cool room.
And you have got a lovely cool house, haven't you? We had discussed that this morning. That's good. And is this something that you suggest for people? You know, for people who haven't swam in a Lido or an outdoor pool before, is this something that you would suggest is a good idea?
Definitely. It's refreshing. It's good for your fitness. It's good for your mental health. It's good all round, especially this weather.
Definitely. I'm sure lots of people who haven't swum before will definitely be taking that up. Thank you so much, Carol.
Pleasure.
And enjoy the sunshine today, and do stay cool as well. Well, there you go. Carol here is enjoying the sunshine in the Lido, as are all of these people behind us. But there is a serious side to all of this as well. A 14-year-old boy is missing and believed to have drowned after entering the River Thames yesterday, and the search for his body was called off at about 6 p.m. last night. So you can only imagine how his family are feeling. And there were 4 other people who have died since Sunday with open water swimming. So the RNLI Lifeboats spokesperson this morning has said that that's not always down to people struggling with swimming. It's about a shock to your body when the air is this hot, 42 degrees it could be today, and the water is so cold, 16 degrees sometimes. Your body goes into shock and it cannot swim. So they're saying if you want to get in the water, then get to your local Lido, get to an outdoor pool, put a paddling pool in your garden like you have, Izzy, but do avoid that open water swimming because it can be dangerous. And the general advice today is stay out of that midday sun and keep hydrated.
It's really good advice, Ellie, and it's just so sad that at a time when the sun's shining and we're all, you know, although it's horribly hot, it is beautiful weather, and that it always comes hand in hand, doesn't it, with these awful tragedies. Ellie, thank you for highlighting that, and I hope you're going to be able to enjoy that lovely Lido behind us at some point, even if it's just dipping your toes in. Make the most of it. Good stuff, Ellie. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, there's certain areas that just get the right amount of heat. I mean, I know Northern Ireland yesterday was about 25 to 30, which was grand. It was like being on your holidays, which is very, very unusual. But Ellie giving advice there. We'd now like to go to Stoke in Staffordshire. Want to meet a GB News viewer, and that is Robert McMillan. We say good morning to you, Robert. Robert, you've lived through all of this before. You're nearly 70 years of age. You are retired now. But tell folk what you did and what you've seen over 48 years.
I'm sorry, the volume's not very good. I'm here to talk about first aid. And I've been doing that for 48 years.
Fantastic. OK, so what would your advice be to people then struggling in the heat or concerned for neighbours? You know, best ways to try and look after themselves during these crazy, crazy temperatures?
Well, funnily enough, I checked last night, the heat-related conditions are not actually covered in first aid at work, but it's easy to refer back and find out how we would treat them. We can talk about dehydration. So that ensures keep neighbours and keep yourself topped up with good fluids. If you see confusion coming on, cramp, headaches, dryness of mouth, top up with fluids. Sunburn's another serious problem. Redness, soreness, and moving on to blistering. If somebody's sunburnt, you can apply the proprietary after sun oils or cool it underwater. If it's a serious burn, then it needs medical attention. The 2 big ones are heat exhaustion, which show headache, confusion, and a weakening pulse, a cold, clammy skin, lots of sweating, and that needs shade, rehydration, and certainly medical attention. And heat stroke is very serious. There'll be a dryness. The internal thermostat will have switched off. The skin will go dry, it will go flushed, and as well as getting somebody to a cool place, then they will need hospitalisation. Heat stroke, very serious.
You know, it's amazing, Robert, how you have to get this message through to people. Yesterday afternoon, around 2:30, I was in the car and I was looking at kids, school kids, not wearing any shirts, you know, walking around. There was no sign of sun cream protection or anything like that. And only I was going down a motorway, I would love to have stopped and said, guys, wise up. I mean, they were probably about 14 years of age. But they think they're invincible, Robert, and they also just don't know the problems, do they? I mean, you've described it all very, very well there. But you feel for people, this is serious stuff if you're in direct sunlight.
Yes, it is very serious. You're quite right to highlight it. It's not nanny stating. We've got a brilliant meteorological office and they paid a lot of money to help us and advise us on all this. So if you're going out in the sunshine, take the correct provisions. Make sure you're covered with loose-fitting clothing so the skin is protected. Wear a hat. Take things a bit easier. If you find yourself being overcome with heat, get to a cool place, have cold drinks, and take the necessary medical actions. I'm only a first aider.
No, you say only a first aider. Thank goodness for people like you, Robert. And what a snazzy shirt. I'm just thinking, I love that trim around the collar there.
Very smart.
Matching the tie.
He's got the blue memo.
Sorry, we're speaking to you, Eamonn, and Isabel, of course.
What did he say? What did he say?
It's in honour of us.
In honour of us.
Very
See,
kind.
keeping standards, Robert. Good talking to you, mate, and be good today. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us.
No. See, I look at no.
You don't want a long break?
No, I do want a long break. But besides that, do you see? I was interested in what Robert was saying. He was talking about people who have sweating and confusion. They may have heat stroke, and I'm just looking at you, and I'm thinking, are you sure you're okay?
I don't sweat. We've talked about this before. I'm like Prince Andrew.
You glow. Yeah,
I just don't sweat.
But the confusion thing.
Oh, stop it. You're so naughty. He's determined to get me to swear on air every day.
Again.
Pokes me like a bear.
Back after this, we've got the back pages.
Hello, good morning. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. 40 Celsius in some parts of the UK today. Mid to high 30s for many. And that's why there's a red warning for extreme heat. These are unprecedented record-breaking temperatures that could and very likely will cause impacts to health and to infrastructure. The heat has been moving our way across the whole of the UK during the last 24 hours, and it intensifies across southeast Scotland, northeast England, into central and eastern parts of England during the rest of the day. With clear skies, although with a bit of a breeze, those temperatures will be rising all day. Mid-30s by mid-morning, and then by the afternoon, mid to high 30s. 34 Celsius in southeast Scotland, Scotland's hottest day on record, and 38 to 40 Celsius for central and eastern England. Truly extraordinary temperatures could cause impacts for many. It will be cooler for southwest England as well as for parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. And that cool air is separated from the heat with an area of showers which will move east during Tuesday night into the start of Wednesday. And those showers, heavy at times, will pop up just about anywhere overnight. And although it's still a warm night, nowhere near as warm as it was last night. 18 or 19 Celsius in the south, 14, 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bright start for many on Wednesday. Still a few showers around, first thing across Wales and the southwest, central and eastern Scotland as well. And then by the afternoon, the focus for showers moves into the Midlands, northern England, eastern Scotland, and eventually East Anglia and the southeast. Could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. And still a hot day, nowhere near as hot, but still a hot day in the east, 30 Celsius. But I think further west, Scotland, Northern Ireland, high teens, and for much of England and Wales in the west, we're looking at low 20s. Back to more typical summer weather for the UK Thursday, Friday, sunny spells and showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Time for the back pages. Here comes our sports slot with Paul Coyte. On the back pages, this is what we've got. Guardian, first of all. Shelley-Ann Fraser-Price, the woman with the longest name in the world. But anyway, she's very fast. She takes the women's 100 metres, and it makes her the first person to win 5 golds in an individual track event. This is at the World Championships. Congratulations to her. Let's go to the Mail. Yeah, sorry, we were supposed to show these, right? The Manchester United manager, Erik ten Hag, he says that he still hasn't spoken to Cristiano Ronaldo about his future at the club. That's because Ronaldo's in Portugal and they're in Australia, basically. Yet you've got another paper saying that Ten Hag is ready to build his team around Ronaldo. This is in The Sun. And the Mirror covers the retirement of England one-day captain Ben Stokes after he hit out what he called the unsustainable schedule for English cricketers. Let's get Paul Coyte's take on that one. Strong words.
Well, they are strong words, but cricket, there's so much cricket being played, and I can understand it.
So much football being played, so much Formula One, so much golf. I mean, they milk all of these sports.
But you think of cricket, you know, this is not a short game.
Yeah.
This is over.
Yeah.
Even in the shortest format, which is 2020, you're talking half a day, 3/4 of a day. The one-day internationals, a whole day. Obviously, you've got 5-day tests, but they're one after another.
And they're touring.
And of course, and the thing is, with also what happened with COVID and the situations, the bubbles they were in, it's almost a breaking point for a lot of these cricketers because they are playing so much. They're playing again. There was only the India one finished recently. They're playing South Africa, a one-day international today. So Ben Stokes has decided this is going to be his last ODI. The one-day international is going to be his last one. He's the Test captain.
Do you think anybody will listen to him, anyone in authority? Because obviously, I mean, historically, there have been a lot of cricket players who have had problems with their mental health, problems being away from family and whatever. Ben's speaking out. He's taken action. But nobody's going to do anything about it, are they?
It's tricky to be able to call because you have different sides with different formats. There are players that cross over, but there's the T20 World Cup, which is coming up at the end of the year. We've got South Africa to play in Tests. We've got ODIs. We've got T. But, I mean, I could go on and just go through the whole fixture list. But is anything going to happen? Probably not, because it's supply and demand. People want to see the sport, and then the more sport there is, the more demand there is. But the players are probably the last ones they think of, but players have got to be thinking about, right, what do I focus on? Nobody is actually going to complain. Nobody is actually going to stand up and say Ben Stokes is out of order for doing it because everybody believes it's the right thing.
Athletics World Championships, Shelley Ann Fraser-Price.
That's 4 different people, by the way. She gets 4 gold medals for one race.
So she wins the women's 100 metres,
Yeah,
and having to run in the heat and everything else.
Yeah, see, this is over in Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah.
That's where the World Championships are. Best World Championships there's ever been was London in 2017 because we buy into athletics and off the back of 2012. But amazingly, in the States, track and field, as they call it, is nowhere near as big as you might imagine it is. So it's something that's suffering. And again, crowds are not that big. Shelley Ann Fraser-Price is an unbelievable athlete. She won the 100 metres yesterday. Dina Asher-Smith came in 4th for us. But we did get a medal today, which was Laura Muir, who came 3rd. And that was in the 1,500 metres. So it was a good run for her.
Want to take you through, I mean, obviously we're still in the transfer window period before in the run-up to the new season, all the teams on tour as well. Manchester United, I think they're in Australia at the minute now. The manager being interviewed, Erik ten Hag, what's he been saying?
Well, the thing is, we can look through this over the last couple of days or even the last couple of weeks. Erik ten Hag, there's different stories saying that, one, he's going to build the side around Cristiano Ronaldo. And then we're hearing that there hasn't been the talks with the Cristiano Ronaldo. A couple of weeks ago, Cristiano Ronaldo wanted out. Ten Hag wants him. I mean, it's a 37-year-old. I mean, we know what a great player he is, but do you build your side around him?
Does he have any choice?
I don't know whether he does have any choice. There's more players which are coming in. Christian Eriksen's now signed, and he's saying what a good decision it is to bring him in. They're over in Australia at the moment, and it seems what he's trying to do is just show his authority on the team, show that he's in charge. It's a very tricky thing to do because there's so much player power. But for a manager, you've got to have that respect from the players, and he's trying to push that around. And, for example, he's even... I mean, this is shocking that he actually banned them from going to the set of Neighbours yesterday, which is...
Seriously?
Yeah, apparently.
Well,
I thought they'd finished Neighbours.
Well, you see, that's an easy way of getting hated, isn't it?
Isn't it? You know, because every player, you'd imagine they'd be
You've gone that far.
I can't wait to go to Erinsborough, and he's saying, no, Erinsborough for you, you've got to think about your football. Already you're going to be on the back foot.
Well, different folks, different strokes with all of that. Anything else that's excited you in the transfer roundup, in the transfer window?
There's a few bits and pieces. There's Matthijs de Ligt, who's another old player of Erik ten Hag, who used to play at Ajax, and he's at Juventus. It's been OK, he hasn't set the world on fire, but Bayern Munich want him, so it looks like he's going to be going there. We're talking £68 million. I mean, he would have been a good sign. I'm surprised that Manchester United weren't interested in him.
Well, who knows? I mean, the complications of all of these things and whatever plans the manager and co have. I mean, it all depends. West Ham, they're looking to sign this Chelsea boy.
Yes, Broja, for £30 million. The other interesting one is Alexander Zinchenko. So this is another ex-Manchester City. He's not ex yet. That's going over to Arsenal, because already Gabriel Jesus has gone over there. We've got Mikel Arteta, knows them well from working with them. So it's almost like with Zinchenko, I believe that he wants to play in midfield. He'll be able to play that position at Arsenal. So that's something that's going to work out, I think, for the both of them. So Arsenal are actually making a lot of moves in the transfer window as well at the moment.
We've got to make a move to the break, Paul. Thank you. We'll have to do that.
I'm off to edit. I'm going to go to the Neighbours set. I can do whatever I want. Apparently, they're allowing me to do that.
Do you know, there are mad people and stupid people, as I keep saying,
There's
who'll
plenty of
probably go out on the golf course today.
Yeah.
You know, could you imagine anything as awful?
I think I'd struggle with pitch and putt. I reckon maybe just a couple of shots.
That heat, you'd struggle with anything.
Too hot out.
You know? People playing sport tennis and things in heat like this. But anyway,
it's nice to sit in the air-conditioned car and watch them and just see how long they last for.
I can't play when the clouds are in the sky, never mind the heat. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Paul Coit there with the sport. Martin Dobbin and Sam Lister. They're going to have your newspapers. Hopefully we'll have your company right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio,
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
we don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Very warm welcome back to the programme. It's 7:37, time to bring you up to date on the latest headlines. And Conservative MPs will vote again today to choose the final three candidates in the leadership race. It comes as Tom Tugendhat was eliminated last night in the third round of voting. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak held on to first place and Penny Mordaunt took second.
Britain's expected to record its highest ever temperatures today. Red extreme heat warnings have been issued for millions across England, with amber alerts across much of the rest of the country. Forecasters predicting at least 40 degrees this afternoon.
The government's expected to announce today it's investing £11.5 billion into train services in the north of England. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the investment will address what he calls the historic imbalance in funding between the north and the south.
Time to go through the papers. No, I was just saying, in the script there, and it said last evening.
I know, I saw that.
Last evening. Who writes? Was this someone from Victorian Times or whatever who's writing the script this morning? Anyway, right. This is the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party. He is Martin Dobney. And this is the Deputy Political Editor of the Daily Express, and she is Sam Lister. Very good to see you.
Sam, we're going to start with you. We're going to talk a bit more about this leadership battle. It got terribly personal, didn't it, on Sunday night, leading to Truss and Sunak deciding it wasn't worth their while to do the Sky News debate tonight. But that being said, Liz Truss has done a big sit-down interview with Stephen Swinford in The Times today. What's she been saying?
Yeah, Rishi Sunak obviously went for Liz Truss. He sees her probably as his biggest rival, really. And he was accusing her of being a socialist, which I think came as a bit of a surprise to Liz Truss. So she's addressing that today in the interview in The Times, and she says, actually, you can't tax your way to growth, basically having a pop at Rishi Sunak. So she's responding quite directly to that. And she's talking about being a low-tax Conservative and her plans to revive the economy by cutting taxes and allowing people to kind of invest, cut red tape and boost the economy that way. So that's what she's setting out in The Times today.
OK, interesting. Any thoughts on that, Martin?
Yeah, I think we should always remember that Liz Truss actively campaigned for Remain. And I think that is a key issue. Onto my story here about Kemi Badenoch being Labour's worst nightmare, and I think that's entirely true.
Why would that be, Martin?
Well, because she's talking common sense on things like net zero. She's talking common sense on things like let's not allow men into women's toilets, the trans issue. She's talking common sense on critical race theory, i.e. teaching white children they're racist because of Britain's historical past. And she's a black woman. And that confuses the heck out of the Labour Party.
Yes.
Because they're not allowed to attack her.
That doesn't fit the narrative, does it?
Precisely. And that is why, I spend all my time talking to ordinary people, same as I did in the 2016 Brexit referendum, the Donald Trump election. And if you talk to cab drivers, people in chip shops, people in Wetherspoons, they like Kemi. They really, really like Kemi. Tory membership want to vote for Kemi, I think. Rishi is the entitled candidate. Liz Truss is a mannequin's dummy. She's completely wooden. I think Kemi would be great for the Tory party, but she probably won't be allowed to the final two.
Interesting that she would be the biggest threat to your little demographic, the Reclaim Party, and it's so rare that politicians would be able to say, you know what, for the greater interest, for the public interest, I would support her, because the reality is, you may say your party's not that small, but the way that the electoral system is in this country is almost impossible for you to ever be a governing party. You may get a few voices within Commons, but it has to be it's a bicameral system.
Yeah, but the whole point is, if you remember the Brexit Party, that made the Conservatives get the job done. Without Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party, they wouldn't have done that.
So you think Reclaim might be doing that for Kemi Badenoch?
Precisely. So what I think is happening is that people are waking up to the fact they're calling her the anti-woke crusader in the Mail today. And that is what I think people are interested in. That they're fed up of being told they're racist. They're fed up of being told that Britain is divisive. She grew up in Nigeria under a socialist regime. She carried water. She has a great backstory. And I think it speaks to the ordinary man and woman.
Sam, does she speak to you or does she speak to your readers?
Our readers are very interested in Kemi Badenoch and also in Liz Truss, particularly. They're quite angry at Rishi Sunak, I have to be honest, because they feel like he helped to knife Boris Johnson, and they are quite angry about that.
So we see Rishi Sunak being set up, the parliamentary party blowing smoke all around him, whatever, and then he jumps the hurdle, he gets out there, faces the membership, and he's in for a rude awakening, you're saying?
I think so. I think he's got quite a lot of work to do on that side of things, because people are quite angry with him, the people who remain loyal to Boris Johnson. And that is, I know a lot of the Westminster set, they wanted Boris Johnson out, and they were very keen to get rid of the Prime Minister. But there's certainly quite a lot of people still in the country who still are very loyal to him, and they're quite angry about how all this happened.
It's interesting, though, when it comes down to the membership, how much will the membership be thinking about the electability of the candidate? Because really, do they think that Liz Truss will be more successful in persuading the Red Wall than, say, Rishi Sunak, just because he stabbed Boris Johnson in the back?
Good point.
Well, they've got to learn the lessons of Labour, haven't they? If you look at Labour and the party, how it chose Jeremy Corbyn, despite the fact he was clearly unelectable, they went for ideological purity over electability. And that is a lesson the party really has to learn. Who is the person who can take you through the next general election and actually win for you? And that's what they really ought to be focusing on. But we know that parties generally don't think that way. They think, who do I actually personally really like?
So at the end of the day, and you will know these things, Sam, or the original lineup of 5 or whatever it was, is that the best the Conservative Party could come up with? Who do you think? Is there anyone you think maybe should have run?
Well, I mean, you saw people like Priti Patel. She was umming and ahhing about whether to throw her hat in the ring, and she would have obviously been quite a popular candidate on the right of the party, but she left it too late, and the right is now quite split between Kemi Badenoch and Liz Truss, and they don't really have their act together about how to put one candidate through. So they could allow 2 of the more centrist candidates, Penny Mordaunt and Rishi Sunak, through, if they don't get their act together.
What about Ben Wallace? He could have been the Prime Minister that never was.
He could have been, but I just don't think Ben Wallace really wanted that level of intense scrutiny on him, and also, he's very much focused on dealing with the war in Ukraine. I don't think he wanted to move away from that brief, and also, there is an awful lot of bad things coming down the road for whoever takes over at number 10. And I think a lot of the candidates did just think, actually...
Yeah, poison chalice.
Yeah,
not
why
for
would
me.
you?
Fair enough. We were talking a lot about woke issues and
Yes.
Kemi Badenoch being very popular. Do you mind if we talk about Prince Harry and his comments to the UN yesterday? The Sun have been covering it.
Yeah, so the last time I was on your show, I spoke about Gary Lineker being the planet's biggest plonker because he invented that he was...
We had to apologise for that.
He had to apologise. His agent got in touch and says he drives a Mini, not a gas-guzzling car, which he had done in the past.
Well, may I just say, also, he rarely drives. I see him near where I live all the time. He walks everywhere.
He walks everywhere. Yeah. He's a fit boy.
He is.
Do you know he's the same age as me?
Is he?
Did you think that? Would you think doesn't he look a lot older?
Far more agile and handsome. But back to Prince Harry. So here we have a platinum-plated plonker. He's at the UN conference in New York, talking about climate change, about how he fears for the world and has been left battered and helpless by the last 12 months. He's saying it's creating havoc on the most vulnerable, suffering most of all. How can a guy who gets £4 million of taxpayers' money still bang on about feeling entitled, and he's talking here about daring transformative decisions are required? Well, here's one. Stop taking private jets to climate change conferences. That might work.
I wonder how he got to New York. Or do they live on the West Coast, don't they?
He flies by private jets. And I think people are utterly sick of this performative, virtue-signalling nonsense.
They're completely unaware of how they look, you know, how it comes across. Why would he be talking about abortion, for instance?
Well, I think he's appealing to an American fan base, and I think they really like him. I do think there is a big difference. I think the Meghan brand is really successful and popular in the States, and it sells. But to a British audience, it's just abhorrent.
I don't think that's true.
Do you not?
So I think a certain metropolitan, well-off climate change zealot elite, because that's what he is, he appeals to them. He doesn't appeal to people in Arkansas or Texas or Florida. You know, he's a complete
The thing is, I think before the Meghan connection came along, he was very liked. He was very well liked. His role in the army and all that sort of thing.
He'd go to Vegas and get his bits out. That's when he was fun.
That's true. Well, but now you've got a situation where he's put in these positions of authority, and you have to ask, why? You're not an authority. What, you are a royal. Are you certain? Yeah.
Because,
almost, yeah.
So I think it's because of this. These people are amongst the most polluting, the most entitled, and the wealthiest on the planet, and so therefore they pose the most to try and self-flagellate their way out of the problem. I think it's an absolute hypocrite to put a sock in it.
OK. Guys, we've got to leave it there. We're going to break off. We're going to talk politics now. Isabel?
We are, because we're joined by Mark Harper, MP, vocal critic of Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and he is supporting Rishi Sunak in the Conservative Party leadership vote. We know he got 115 votes, one of which was down to you, Mr Harper. Good morning to you. Why is Rishi Sunak the man for you?
Good morning. Well, look, it's very simple for me. It's the things he set out in his campaign. It's about restoring trust in how we run the government. It's about getting the economy rebuilt, and it's about bringing the country together. And I think if you look at the way his campaign's been going, putting on support from my parliamentary colleagues at each stage, I think that message is getting through to people. And I think post the weekend, we had 2 debates over the weekend, and I think he set out clearly, both on the economy and on a range of other issues, that he's both the right man to be Prime Minister in September, but also the right man to lead the Conservative Party into an election victory in a couple of years' time, whenever that comes.
Easier said than done, Mark. We were just sitting talking here with our newspaper reviewers that, yeah, OK, he may and he probably will win the majority of parliamentary members there to qualify. Then he's got to get over that hurdle and face the membership, a very different scenario.
Yes, that's right, but I think having been in the Conservative Party for many years and worked with Conservative Party members across the country, our members are very pragmatic and they're very sensible, and I think they'll listen to his message. I think he's being honest with people about the economic challenges facing the country. He's not saying the things that are easy to say, that would be convenient, but he's telling people what they need to hear, and I think our members are very realistic people. They'll listen to his message about the #1 priority is defeating inflation, and I think they'll also look at how he polls across the country, and they'll see that in him they've got someone who can lead that battle to try and persuade the public to give us what will be a 5th consecutive term in a couple of years' time. And I think for both of those reasons, I think they'll put their trust in him if he's successful in getting to that members' stage at the end of this week.
But I really do just think you're sort of outlining the views of your peers, and the message we're getting loud and clear, certainly from our viewers, is that they see him as the man who wielded the knife against Boris Johnson, and they're just anyone but Rishi.
Well, look, on the subject about the Prime Minister, yes, Rishi Sunak did resign as Chancellor because he felt that he'd been loyal to the Prime Minister all the way through, but they reached a point with the events around the appointment of Christopher Pincher as Deputy Chief Whip and the way Number 10 handled that situation. Rishi Sunak felt that enough was enough and he resigned from the government. And that, of course, many colleagues in government took the same view, and in the end the Prime Minister had to stand down, and I think it was right that he did so. And in fact, that view is shared by a majority of members of the Conservative Party. But look, I want to focus on the future. Rishi will be setting out his approach to dealing with the economic challenges facing the country. He's absolutely across that subject. We need someone who can hit the ground running, deal with the economic challenges facing all of the people listening to this show. He's proved he's the right man for that, and then I think the public are really warming to him. The polls following the debates at the weekend were very positive, and I think that's the campaign he's going to take out to the country if he's successful in being the last two when we have our final ballot on Wednesday.
Well, just explain to me, Mark, why did he stand down from the Sky debate tonight?
So I think, look, the view that was taken both by him and indeed, I believe, by Liz Truss's campaign was, given the electorate at the moment that they're facing, the 358 Conservative MPs, that at this stage of the campaign, the two debates that they'd done at the weekend had given people a very good idea about where the candidates stood. And I understand his campaign's been very clear that if he's successful at getting into the debate in the country with the final two candidates, he will be very pleased to do more debates when the debates widened up to our members in the country. And I think that's the appropriate time to do it, when you're appealing to those hundreds of thousands of members across the country.
Well, Mark, he's always very welcome on our programme, speaking directly to the Conservative Party membership and indeed lots of Red Bull voters. We extend our hand, do pass that message on. But I just want to ask you, look, there's been lots of discussion and everybody trying to shrug off the slur of being in some way socialist, and we saw Rishi Sunak accusing Liz Truss of having socialist politics when it comes to taxation. How helpful is it to have the IMF coming out today in support of Rishi Sunak's approach, saying that to cut taxes at the moment is just not appropriate?
Well, look, I think, Rishi's been making a very clear view that at the moment the number one challenge facing the country and your viewers is inflation. It's really important that we bear down on inflation and we make sure that it doesn't become embedded. That's the most important thing for people's cost of living. So that's what the first priority is. He's been very clear. He wants to cut taxes, but you've got to cut taxes at the appropriate time. If you were to do it now, you would actually fuel inflation and make the situation facing your viewers worse, not better.
Mark, thanks for your time today. Appreciate those explanations there. And as Isabel said there, Rishi's always welcome on his own on this programme to talk to the membership, which are very heavily involved in this programme. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks, Eamonn. Thanks, Isabel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, sitting here, Sam Lister, your role as political editor of the Daily Express, or deputy political editor. What do you think of what you're hearing there about Rishi and his reasons for not standing tonight, or not running in the Sky News debate tonight, saving it for the membership?
Yeah, I think from his point of view and from Liz Truss's point of view, it really is a sensible, if disappointing from our point of view, decision, because actually it was very damaging for the party, the way the debate went on Sunday. So you can totally see why they've pulled out of that. But it is, particularly for us political geeks, it is a disappointment, because we do like to watch these things and people being put through their paces. But you are going to have 6 weeks of hustings over the summer where they are grilled. The final two candidates are grilled by the party membership and interviewers, and so it's not like we're going to have any missed opportunity when it comes to scrutinising what they stand for.
Yeah, Martin, what did you make of Mark Harper there?
I don't think at this stage anybody will make their mind change by watching another debate. I think people know how they're going to vote in the membership, and I think the grassroots is backing Kemi. I think it'd be really interesting to see how it's kind of the horse trading works behind the scenes, because I think they want to keep her out the final two. I think she will beat Rishi.
Meaning Rishi Sunak's people want to keep her out.
So they'll horse trade to try and get Liz Truss against Rishi, hoping that.
But if she doesn't get through, then that changes the whole landscape. I mean, if the membership want Kemi,
what they want and what they get, two different things.
Precisely, but they won't get the chance to vote, so they'll have a choice between two tailor's dummies. That's what I think they are. Kemi, I think, will be a real breath of fresh air for the country and a really progressive choice.
Very good.
If you were to predict who you think, just one word, who will be knocked out today, who do you think?
I'm really hoping Penny goes.
OK. Sam?
I think it might be Kemi.
OK. Kemi or Penny? Interesting.
Why do you think, Sam? So, because, I mean, she was riding so high. I mean, she was the early front runner and whatever, and you thought the momentum was behind her. Where's it gone wrong?
I don't think it's gone wrong at all. I think she's done incredibly well, and the momentum is still with her, but she's got a little bit of a way to catch up. And so I think if you're on the right of the party and you're trying to decide who is the person I back now to kind of push them through to the final two, surely you would go with the one who's got slightly more ahead in the race at the moment. But that said, it's a very volatile voting process, so, you know, it's a guess rather than
That's what makes it so interesting. The next 24 hours are going to be fascinating. Who knows what we'll be talking about this time tomorrow?
Who knows? Guys, they're going to be back in about 40 minutes' time. Sam Lister and Martin Dobney, thank you both very much indeed. Now, very interesting thing coming up, because in this hot weather, a lot of people leave their windows open, and that is a paradise for burglars. After the break, we're going to be talking to a former burglar turned security expert.
That's what they all say. Sorry. What? Anyway, I'll say it to his face, don't worry.
He says why this heat wave could lead actually to a crime wave, OK?
First of all, here's your forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Ada McGiven from the Met Office. 40 Celsius in some parts of the UK today, mid to high 30s for many, and that's why there's a red warning for extreme heat. These are unprecedented record-breaking temperatures that could and very likely will cause impacts to health and to infrastructure. The heat has been moving our way across the whole of the UK during the last 24 hours, and it intensifies across southeast Scotland, northeast England, into central and eastern parts of England during the rest of the day. With clear skies, although with a bit of a breeze, those temperatures will be rising all day. Mid-30s by mid-morning, and then by the afternoon, mid to high 30s. 34 Celsius in southeast Scotland, Scotland's hottest day on record, and 38 to 40 Celsius for central and eastern England. Truly extraordinary temperatures could cause impacts for many. It will be cooler for southwest England as well as for parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. And that cool air is separated from the heat with an area of showers which will move east during Tuesday night into the start of Wednesday. And those showers, heavy at times, will pop up just about anywhere overnight. And although it's still a warm night, nowhere near as warm as it was last night. 18 or 19 Celsius in the south, 14, 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bright start for many on Wednesday. Still a few showers around, first thing across Wales and the southwest, central and eastern Scotland as well. And then by the afternoon, the focus for showers moves into the Midlands, northern England, eastern Scotland, and eventually East Anglia and the southeast. Could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. And still a hot day, nowhere near as hot, but still a hot day in the east. 30 Celsius, but I think further west, Scotland, Northern Ireland, high teens, and for much of England and Wales in the west, we're looking at low 20s. Back to more typical summer weather for the UK, Thursday, Friday, sunny spells and showers.
Tonight on GB News, at 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Tom Tugendhat knocked out of the Tory leadership contest. That leaves 4 candidates.
Good morning. It's just after 8 o'clock on Tuesday, July the 19th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss and Kemi Badenoch are the final 4 contestants left in the Tory leadership contest.
Another round of voting is to take place this afternoon. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson will hold his final cabinet meeting in number 10 today. Conservative MPs backed Johnson's government in a confidence vote, giving him 7 more weeks in Downing Street before handing over to his successor.
The UK will experience its hottest day on record today. Temperatures predicted to reach 42 degrees in some parts of the country. The Met Office has issued an extreme heat warning. Network Rail has discouraged people from making what they term are unnecessary journeys.
And Prince Harry's delivered a keynote speech to the United Nations in New York. The Duke of Sussex spoke about abortion, climate change and the war in Ukraine.
Good to hear from you. You know what to do. It's gbviews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet as well at GB News. Okay, so those are the Tory leadership contenders, and they will be whittled down to 3 today. MPs will cast their votes in the 4th round.
You were saying it's like a game show, isn't it? It's like a politician's game. It's like Love Island for politicians. Well, all of this comes as the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Tom Tugendhat, was eliminated last night. He received the fewest number of votes.
The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, held on to first place, 115 votes for him.
Meanwhile, Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt took second place.
Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, she's in 3rd.
And Ex-Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch came in 4th.
And the final 2 candidates are going to be decided by Wednesday. Now, we've got a very interesting guy beside us now, and he is James Crouch. James is Head of Policy and Public Affairs at
very Northern Irish.
At Opinion Research. So, what is your research telling you, James?
Well, the most interesting thing is how inconclusive the race is at this stage. So Rishi Sunak, who is frontrunner, has barely a third of the parliamentary party behind him at this stage. So David Cameron had almost half on the second ballot. Theresa May had over half by this point. So the only thing that we can truly say is that Rishi Sunak is the most likely to be on the ballot and top it. Who is going to be the second person in there is completely open at this moment.
Now, this is where it becomes really, really interesting. So they get through, whoever the parliamentary party decide on may not necessarily be who the membership want. Any info as to who the membership wants?
So the last time we polled the membership, it was pretty even almost between Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt, or Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. So we did some head-to-heads. So that was 2 weeks ago. We'll have another 6 weeks of campaign once they decide who's going to be on that ballot, and anything could happen. one imagines, or at least the kind of commonly accepted logic is that the membership would be a bit more comfortable with Liz Truss, but a competition between Penny Mordaunt and Rishi Sunak would be the most likely to be a decision between two electorally viable candidates, at the very least.
And who do you think is most likely to get knocked out today from your research?
It should... Well, I believe the common view is Kemi Badenoch is still the most likely to go out. I think that this is why we then get into this confusing situation of if Tom Tugendhat's votes go to Penny Mordaunt on this round and then Kemi Badenoch's votes go to Liz Truss on the next round, we're then back to, well, OK, we still don't know where we are until that very final who's through to the final two. And as I say, it goes back to the MPs being incredibly inconclusive, really, for this stage. No one's really jumped out ahead. And the last weekend, we've had two debates, and that's not helped anyone make up their minds much more clearly. In fact, the worst performer, Liz Truss, has actually gained votes, and Penny Mordaunt, who, was a respectable middle of the pack, has dropped one. So it's remarkable to see how people are responding to the actual evidence put before them.
And what we've been discussing a lot this morning, as Eamonn was saying, is the difference in the kind of appeal of not only you want to, first of all, win over the MPs, then you want to win over your parliamentary party, your membership. And then once you become PM, you've got to win a general election. And that's three quite different demographics. Who do you think would be a bigger threat to the Labour Party come a general election?
I think Penny Mordaunt is most likely to be the biggest threat, partly because she hasn't been in Boris Johnson's cabinet, which is always useful. So they'll have to totally change tact on how they attack the Conservative Party. I think the only thing to say is that Liz Truss is most definitely the biggest electoral liability for them. So after the last poll, she topped the list who people said they definitely didn't want to be Prime Minister. She was the most likely for people to say would be a bad PM if they were given the chance.
Why are people saying that? Were people able to elaborate on what it was? I mean, if we were talking just purely on personality, we were all commenting that, the other night, it sort of reminded us a bit of Theresa May. It was a bit uncomfortable watching her. She was almost trying to remember her lines, and it was quite stiff and wooden. Not to say she's not an incredibly hard-working and effective cabinet minister, but is that what people are saying? It's her personality, or what is it?
Well, I'm sure that doesn't help, but then also she's much more comfortable playing some of those kind of solidly Conservative tunes. So amongst the Conservative Party itself, she's not as unpopular. But precisely as you say, once we get past the party, her base is with the right of MPs, then you get through the membership, and she's got a base with the right of the membership. Then you've got the voters, and I'm not quite sure she can pull off the electoral coalition that Boris Johnson could do. She's not the same person as him, even if she's trying to be the Boris Johnson continuity candidate. So the question is if you need to start afresh, who do you start afresh with? Rishi Sunak is the most popular on the face of it, but Penny Mordaunt would be the freshest choice.
Is he getting some of that popularity, do you think, some of that cachet still from being dishy-rishy and handing out cash during furlough? Do people remember that? And
I think it's profile.
Do you think it's profile?
I think they know who he is and they know what he does, whereby, there's less profile for the Liz Trusses of this world, the Penny Mordaunts and the Kemi Badenochs.
Well, I think that's definitely true. I think the reason why that he doesn't have that still is the reason why this is such an inconclusive race. I think a year ago he would have walked this. It would have been so obvious that he was the most popular politician going. It would have been just such an easy choice for the Conservative Party to make. His popularity has been declining for a while, but the spring statement where he seemed to botch giving actually, a large amount of help, really did his reputation a lot of damage. And he's tried to reverse it since, but that's what's putting us here.
And was that him or was that Boris Johnson? There were lots of suggestions anyway that at least the insinuation at the moment is the bad decisions that he's made are all down to Boris, and he's trying to claim, he wanted to do certain things and wasn't able to. Any truth in that?
Well, the Labour Party will certainly want to say that there's a lot of truth that Rishi is completely culpable for a lot of the economic decisions that have been made for the last couple of years. So whether or not it is or not, he's totally involved with everything that's happened.
Guys, listening and watching, I just want to say to you, I hope you're following all of this. I hope you're engaged with all of this. I hope you understand all of this. But James just pointed out to Isabel and I that you've got 6 more weeks of this, whatever way it goes. When it gets down to the final 2, then they will be campaigning for 6 weeks?
Yes. Until the 5th of September.
Oh, dear.
I know, but in all seriousness...
The novelty may have worn off by then.
You know, ends this week, doesn't it? They're breaking up for the summer, so I suppose there'll be nothing else to talk about.
Yeah. James, really appreciate it. James is Head of Policy and Public Affairs at Opinium Research. Thank you very much indeed. Good listening to you there. The time, 8:10. Well, yesterday it was hot. It was very, very hot. 38 degrees the temperature reached in much of the southeast of England and beyond. Today it could hit
42 degrees. I mean, the sort of likes of which I've never heard of in my lifetime, temperatures, that sort of level. It will be the hottest day on record if that happens. So we're asking this morning, how are you coping in the heat?
So, you know, one of the things I was wondering was the accumulative effect. So yesterday was a hot day, and why then does today get hotter? We're no closer to the sun or whatever happens, but apparently there's some sort of dome over the UK that when the hot air rises, it then comes down again and then just goes around in circles. So it's like that. You're recirculating the same air, really, so it gets hotter and hotter and hotter.
Live and learn every day.
Yeah, it's a meteorological phenomenon there. Let's go to the phenomenon that is Ellie Costello. London feels Lido, she is. I never know why a Lido is called a Lido.
Or whether indeed it's a Lido.
Why is it or a Lido, or why doesn't it just say swimming pool?
I know, that's always something that baffles me as well. I've been calling it a Lido, but my guest I'm going to speak to in a minute calls it Lido. So that's a conversation to be having today, I think, for sure. But it's an absolute scorcher here today. Already 27 degrees, and it's just gone 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's just going to keep getting hotter and hotter. We've got that red weather warning today. 42 degrees in some parts of the UK today. That's absolutely unheard of. It's one for the history books if that happens. And 42 degrees we could see anywhere from Yorkshire to the home counties and here in London as well. So lots of us could be experiencing those really high temperatures. And last night, many of you may have struggled to sleep if you're watching at home or you're listening on the radio. And if you did, that's because it was one of the hottest summer nights on record. It was in the mid-20s, and we're going to be experiencing the same sort of weather tonight as well. But lots of people were here bright and early this morning, cooling off in this Lido at London Fields. We're going to speak to one of those swimmers now. This is Jan. Jan, good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. How was your swim this morning? We saw you with your float. Looked like you're having a great time.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I've just finished my swim and I want to get right back in there because it's so beautiful in this weather.
It's the best place to be in this weather, isn't it?
Certainly, it's the only place to be. A lot of the people here, including myself, swim all of year round, but weather like this is great.
And you were saying, weren't you, that in the winter you come here with your tea?
Oh, yes, I bring a mug of tea. Yes, it's nice to have that instead of a cold drink, because you still dehydrate even in the cold temperatures when you're swimming, so it's good to keep hydrated, hot or cold, really.
And you're here, as you say, all year long, and you're a regular here. You're called Jan the Biscuit. That's your nickname. Why is that?
Well, it's because the team who help run the Lido are so lovely. They keep it so nice for us that I bring them a little packet of biscuits or a little treat. But healthy treats too. So on a Tuesday, it's Fruity Tuesday, and today they had a bunch of bananas instead.
You don't want to spoil them, do you, Jan? So you keep them on their toes. They don't know what they're getting, the fruit or the biscuit. And what's the plan for today then? We have got that red weather warning. Yes. Lots of people being advised to stay at home. What are your plans after you've had your swim?
I'm going to go home to a nice cool room. I've got some chilled wet tea towels in the fridge, so I can put those round my neck to keep cool while I watch the cricket. There's a one-day international on today. And then this evening I'll keep cool because I always keep a couple of hot water bottles in the fridge, fill them with cold water, use them at night as you would a hot water bottle, and then when you wake up in the morning, stick them back in the fridge and you've got them cold It's easy, it doesn't cost a lot, and it works.
Jan, you are fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. You're looking so glam on the edge of the pool there. There you go, Jan's top tips. That's how you stay cool tonight in those sky-high temperatures. And lots of people here having fun at the Lido, but 5 people have unfortunately passed away since Sunday in open water swimming conditions. So there is that warning this morning that if you do want to get into the water and cool off, do head to a local Lido, a swimming pool, or maybe set up a paddling pool in your garden, as I know you have, Izzy. But do avoid that open water swimming because it can be really dangerous. And the general advice for today is stay out of that midday sun and keep hydrated.
Yeah, so sad. Really good advice, Ellie. Often young men, I've noticed the trend anyway in recent days. It's a teenage boy in Richmond in London last night, and another boy in a lake near Maidenhead, and then you were talking about a boy up in Salford in Manchester. Really sad. And that warning, it is this gorgeous weather, blue skies everywhere, but just be careful when it comes to water. It's really dangerous.
The government's won a vote of confidence in Parliament by 349 votes, 238.
Yes, Labour had sought to hold a confidence vote to try and force Boris Johnson out sooner, but the government argued it's unnecessary because the Prime Minister has already said he'll go in September.
Unions have warned the government against giving public sector workers a pay rise below the rate of inflation. Announcement will happen later today on pay rises for public sector workers. So, they're talking about police there, teachers, doctors. There is speculation the offers will be around 5%, which unions argue is less than half the current level of inflation.
The government's expected to announce today that it's investing £11.5 billion into train services in the north of England. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the investment will address the historic imbalance in funding between the north and the south.
Look, we're going to take a break there, and then obviously we're going to be talking more about the heat stroke, heat rash. Dr. Frankie, you'll get an appointment with her telling you how to stay safe in the sun right after the weather forecast, which will affect all of us.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. 40 Celsius in some parts of the UK today, mid to high 30s for many, and that's why there's a red warning for extreme heat. These are unprecedented, record-breaking temperatures that could and very likely will cause impacts to health and to infrastructure. The heat has been moving our way across the whole of the UK during the last 24 hours, and it intensifies across southeast Scotland, northeast England, into central and eastern parts of England during the rest of the day. With clear skies, although with a bit of a breeze, those temperatures will be rising all day. Mid-30s by mid-morning, and then by the afternoon, mid to high 30s. 34 Celsius in southeast Scotland, Scotland's hottest day on record, and 40 Celsius for central and eastern England. Truly extraordinary temperatures could cause impacts for many. It will be cooler for southwest England as well as for parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. And that cool air is separated from the heat with an area of showers which will move east during Tuesday night into the start of Wednesday. And those showers, heavy at times, will pop up just about anywhere overnight. And although it's still a warm night, nowhere near as warm as it was last night. 18 or 19 Celsius in the south, 14, 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bright start for many on Wednesday. Still a few showers around, first thing across Wales and the southwest, central and eastern Scotland as well. And then by the afternoon, the focus for showers moves into the Midlands, northern England, eastern Scotland, and eventually East Anglia and the southeast. Could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. And still a hot day, nowhere near as hot, but still a hot day in the east, 30 Celsius. But I think further west, Scotland, Northern Ireland, high teens, and for much of England and Wales in the west, we're looking at low 20s. Back to more typical summer weather for the UK Thursday, Friday, sunny spells and showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's 8:21. A very warm welcome back. Still to come on our programme this morning.
A very warm welcome.
Very hot welcome back.
Of course it's going to be a warm welcome.
Scorchio.
Yes, a hot welcome back.
A very hot welcome back.
Yeah.
Look, we've got lots more coming your way on the programme this morning.
And we've got the very sad story.
Yes.
Archie Battersby, his mum has been in this studio, and as she continues to fight for him after doctors said they should stop providing life support. We're going to be speaking to the parents of Charlie Gard, and they're hoping their foundation and Charlie's Law will help raise awareness for all this and support other families who find themselves in a similar situation. Just after 9 o'clock, that one.
We're also talking about whether the heat wave could lead to a crime wave.
Tell us
We're all being
more.
told to keep our doors open, our
Yes.
windows open. We're often asleep when we do that to let all that cooler air in. We'll be speaking to a former burglar, a reformed burglar, turned security expert,
Yes.
sharing his advice on how to keep your home
Now,
safe.
I
Get
was-
inside the mind of a thief.
Well,
That's
getting
8:45.
inside the mind of someone, I mean, I was talking to someone, this is an intelligent person,
Yeah.
right, who goes to work and leaves their windows open to let air circulate around the house. So that's fine if you don't need your TV,
Yeah.
or you don't need any jewellery or anything you have or whatever. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you want to be fleeced, I wouldn't advise it personally. I think you should do with the heat. But this person succumbs. She needs sort of like fainting salts. What are they called? Smelling salts.
Yeah, smelling salts. But you know what?
If
They
she
can do it in broad daylight when you're
wilts.
at home. All the tricks of the trade. I'm told that they can distract you. They can work in pairs. One rings
Yes.
the doorbell, the other one goes in the back door. It's a bit scary, but we should all be aware. So that's, I think, 8:45.
When I was young, they used to warn about when you went on holiday to cancel your milk bottles because
because that was a good sign.
that was a
that
sign.
you
But
were
now
right.
nobody gets milk bottles delivered.
No, but people get newspapers delivered, and I
Very
always know when
few.
my neighbours are on holiday because
Yeah.
the Sunday Times is lying around all week. All the
piles up.
bins don't go in on bin day, so we
Yeah.
always help each other out as neighbours.
And then there's sneaky people in the bushes who are watching all this,
No,
ready to
there are.
pounce.
No.
Ready to pounce.
I don't like to believe
Yeah.
So we're talking about that and all of the rest of the day's discussions. Lots of you sending in your thoughts and your views on
Close
who
your
you'd like
windows,
to
lock
see
your
leading
doors.
The Tory party. Keep those thoughts coming in. GB Views at gbnews.uk or tweet at GB News.
In the studio now, we say hello, good morning, and welcome to Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence. And the reason we're talking to her is we wanted to know that you should be aware of the signs of heat stroke and maybe invisible aspects, Frankie, of the sun. Okay, you can look, you know when you've got sunburn, but then you may be feeling a bit off, and it could be heat stroke. How would you know?
Heat exhaustion and heat stroke are
Two different things?
Two different things, but on the same kind of spectrum. And it's essentially your body's physiological response to being overheated and not being as efficient at cooling itself down. So we have sensors in our body, in our skin peripherally, and also in our brain, which sense a rise in core body temperature and switch on mechanisms to cool down, like flushing our skin and the blood vessels dilating or increasing sweating. When you get on the elements of heat exhaustion and heat stroke, it's when those mechanisms are overwhelmed and you're not able to cool your body down. So things to look out for are feeling quite unwell after a period of being in the heat, feeling a bit drowsy. You may notice that you feel a bit faint and dizzy as your blood pressure can drop, feeling nauseous, reduced appetite, and you can sometimes also get stomach cramps and things. When it gets a bit more extreme, usually you can cool yourself down and feel better within about half an hour. If those symptoms are prolonged over half an hour of trying to cool yourself down, it may actually be heat stroke, which is an emergency. And that's where a whole heap of physiological things go on in your body, and it actually can cause central nervous system dysfunction. So you can become confused, lose consciousness. There is complete kind of shock and organ dysfunction, and it can actually lead to death. There's around 2,000 deaths a year in the UK due to heat stroke.
Gosh, that's really shocking.
2,000 deaths a year.
Yeah.
And they've been talking about the excess deaths being caused by this little heat wave that we're experiencing, and we're expecting a spike in those at the moment. So it's really important people heed these warnings. Is anyone in particular vulnerable to that, or is it just about exposure? I mean, my parents are absolutely religious about wearing hats in the sun, to the point where they're sort of neurotic about it, but they make me feel paranoid that if I'm in the sun without a hat on, I'm going to get some sort of heat stroke.
So there are particular groups that are more vulnerable. Children, especially ones who can't tell you when they're too hot, elderly people, and people with certain kind of cardiovascular or circulatory diseases like diabetes, heart disease, they are at increased risk. But actually this can affect anyone. So these are entirely preventable conditions, so none of us are kind of immune to this, and I would really advise people to be sensible when...
I think the dangerous thing is you could look at those symptoms. The effects are awful, but you could look at the symptoms and it could be a number of things that would be wrong with someone. More noticeable, perhaps, could be heat rash.
Oh, have you ever had that?
I have.
Prickly heat.
It is
the
torture.
Worst. Yeah.
Absolutely torture. So prickly heat or heat rash is basically caused by excessive sweating, and it's where the...
You watch out for that, Isabel.
I did not know that.
No, I'm just saying.
But I've had it on my chest.
That's where I had it as well. And it's basically where...
You have a sweaty chest.
I don't accept that.
It's where your sweat gets trapped in the sweat glands and causes kind of local inflammation around the sweat gland, which can feel really stingy and really intensely itchy. It usually goes away on its own, but you can relieve that itch and that pain by...
See, itch, do you recommend a scratch for an itch?
I mean, no one can resist a scratch when you're itchy, can you? But it's not going to improve the rash. It's probably going to aggravate it more and cause further inflammation.
What sort of creams and things would you recommend?
I found an amazing one. I got really bad heat rash when I was in Thailand many years ago, it must be said. But I found this powder. I think it had something snake something in the name, and it really worked. And I saw Anthea Turner had found some of it recently.
Snake venom.
Well, I don't know if it has anything snaky in it, but it had a snake title. Anyway, I really recommend that if you can get your hands on it. It's sort of a powder.
Well, in my day, Doctor, they used to just use plain things like calamine lotion.
Calamine?
Yes, the very thing, that. Can you drink that as well?
No.
But it's just not a tea.
No, that's chamomile tea.
So what I'm
Calamine lotion.
Okay, so calamine. You used to be able to go to the doctors, and they made it up in their little labs in the back. They actually used to do. You're looking at me, doctors, that I'm talking nonsense. But chemists used to make up prescriptions, ointments, lotions, all sorts of potions. That's why they're called chemists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, relieving instead of scratching the itch, using things like cold flannels to dab on, you can use lotions like calamine lotion or aloe vera.
Aloe vera, yeah.
Yeah, and you can also take antihistamines that you'd usually take for hay fever, because they can actually help relieve the itch as well.
Are some contraceptive pills, do they make women more susceptible to sort of skin problems and heat rashes and things like that? I seem to remember somebody telling me that you could be more at risk of heat rash if you're on a contraceptive pill.
I'm not sure specifically about the contraceptive pill, but there's certainly some medications that can increase your sensitivity to the sun and change your sensitivity of your skin in general. So if you are taking any medications, over the counter or prescribed, it's worth reading the label or speaking to your local pharmacist about that.
Good advice.
OK, Doc, thank you very much indeed. You look as if you've had a sensible approach to the sun. I mean, you look evenly brown.
SPF 50
Good British
every day.
tan from Cornwall. Very nice.
See, that's the thing, actually. So you had SPF 15.
And
5 or 50.
50.
50.
Yeah.
Well, you see, a lot of people would say, myself included, I would think, well, you're never going to tan through that, but you can still tan.
You can still tan. SPF isn't a complete sunblock, and of course it does wear off throughout the day. You do need to regularly apply it, so your skin does catch the sun by way of human nature, not
you
necessarily.
Look very well, and I'm glad you got the blue memo as well.
Yes, all coordinated.
In uniform today.
Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence there, so take care in that sunlight. We'll take a break there. After that, we're going to go through the day's newspapers with Martin Dobney and Sam Lister right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's 8:32. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines this morning. And Conservative MPs are voting again today to choose the final 3 candidates in the leadership race. It comes as Tom Tugendhat was eliminated last night in the 3rd round. The former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, held on to first place, Penny Mordaunt in second. The UK is expected to record its highest ever temperatures today. Red extreme heat warnings have been issued for millions of people across England, with amber alerts across much of the UK. Forecasters predicting possibly 40 degrees this afternoon.
And the government's expected to announce it's investing £11.5 billion into train services in the north of England. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the investment will address what he calls the historic imbalance in funding between north and south. Is what you call levelling up, and levelling up the newspapers this morning. Sam Lister. Sam is the deputy political editor of the Daily Express, and levelling up with her, Martin Dobney, who's the deputy leader of the Reclaim Party. Very lovely to have you with us throughout the programme this morning, guys. And Sam, we want to begin with the heat wave. We go to the Times, and they're relating heat and hunger.
I mean, as if there wasn't enough bad news with hot weather, with the rails buckling and the tarmac melting. It's bad news for men anyway, at least. Apparently, UV rays, when they hit the skin of a male, they make you really hungry, and they add about 300 calories to your daily intake. And apparently, women's hormones stop this happening. So,
I don't think I've got that hormone. I'm still starving. I was just thinking I'd really like a sausage sandwich or something.
Today?
I'm hungry.
Well, I've got the other hormone. I've got that. Funny, what it does is it's this terrible effect to me that it swells my belly when I'm sunbathing. That's my excuse, because normally it's quite flat. And then I take my shirt off and it goes...
Washboard, normally.
Well, they're saying an extra stone over summer for men if you...
An extra stone over
Just
summer?
all the beer that the chaps consume to keep cool.
Just say, keep away from the alcohol, keep away from barbecues, keep away from the ice creams, which all sounds pretty miserable.
Oh, it's no fun.
Summer,
Do you know, I had a barbecue at the weekend, and I thought I was very good, because what I did was, much to my wife's annoyance, she gave me lots of buns, you know, to put things in, and I discarded them. And I just ate the meat and the chicken.
Very healthy.
And I thought I felt virtuous through doing that.
Low carb.
Probably spoilt it with the corn and the cob.
No, the corn and the cob's delightful.
It's full of sugar, but...
It's good sugar. It's vegetable.
Is it?
Yeah, nature's sweeties. That's what I was
Okay.
calling. Right, let's stay with the theme then about the weather. And we could talk, I suppose, Sam, the Telegraph. Sorry to go... Actually, Martin, we've got a climate change story there, The Guardian, page 6. No longer a cold country, say scientists.
Yeah, this may come as a surprise to people at the moment who are enduring the heat wave, but The Guardian has declared that Britain is no longer a cold country, based on the fact that we've had a bit of a heat wave. And
I'd reserve judgment on that till November.
Yeah,
maybe.
so I think it's really important to kind of cut through the diatribe and the zealotry and the rhetoric about we're all going to die and actually look at some facts. And that is, between 2000 and 2019, per year, 800 people in England and Wales die of the heat and 65,000 die of cold. That's 75 times more people. And I think we need to really focus on the fact that the so-called solution to the planet getting hotter is we push up energy prices and we can't afford to heat our homes, but that will push more people, especially poorer people, towards an early grave, without being too depressing about it. So we've got to keep perspective. Cold is a bigger killer
It's
than heat.
really weird that you bring up that subject. I was thinking about that in the car this morning, coming into work, and I thought, which do you prefer, which do you detest more, heat or cold? And I thought I would prefer heat over cold. What about you?
You prefer to be hot?
Yeah.
Well, and particularly if you're going straight for sausages and sweet corn and beers, then I'm with you.
OK, Isabel?
Oh, definitely. I prefer to be hot, but not at the expense of the planet. I don't.
No, but I'm just saying,
not care that
is your
there's a climate
preference-
crisis. I'm a reptile through and through, cold-blooded.
Right, OK.
Cold
Sam?
all the way. You can put on an extra jumper, you can do something about it, but you can't. There's a limit to how many clothes you can take off in a heat wave.
But except there's another problem with winters, and that's darkness, which I find very, very depressing.
No, summer and heat
every time. And longer days and all that.
But I was also thinking in the car on the way in this morning that with all this extra heat that we're enjoying, surely there must be ways that clever people can harness it and help us to get through the colder periods when it comes to the winter. And that leads me, Sam, on to the story you've chosen in the Telegraph about our problem with wind power being the fact that there's often no wind. We've got to come up with other strategies, surely, capitalising on, what may have devastating consequences on the environment, but we can't deny there are opportunities with this hot weather.
Yeah, and the government yesterday announced it was launching a review into the electricity market, and it's about energy security and also about bringing down the cost of bills. Now, because of everything that's going on, this kind of happened without many people taking much notice, but the way the Telegraph has written it up, it says that actually under the plans being looked at, you could end up paying more for your electricity on days where there is no wind. The way the government's pitched it is the reverse of that you will actually get cheaper bills on the days where there is a lot of wind. So, you paid your money and you take your choice on that one.
Interesting. Martin, you're talking about schools being out. Telegraph page 4, almost 200 schools have reduced their hours or closed. Is this all linked to the heatwave?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a big conversation again, hasn't it, about snowflake Britain. It's like the first whiff of a heat wave and we shut half the country down, you can't get a train, and now 200 schools have gone out. And I think that there's a huge conversation we need to have about this appetite to kind of just put your feet up and have a day off when it gets hot or when it gets cold or whatever it may be, whether it's a COVID outbreak. And I just think it's a complete dereliction of duty. And when you think about how much education children lost during the pandemic and how far the neediest children fell behind, special needs education kids, further behind the working class kids.
Vulnerable children
Precisely.
from abusive homes.
That's right. And here we are again, the first whiff of a heat wave, just taking a day off. I just think we've just become this like, spineless country. No, it's no hotter than Spain.
I mean, I
get on with the day's work.
I'm listening to you, and I want to sympathise with teachers and things. I think it's a massive responsibility to look after however many kids in the class, especially if they're young. But then you think, if I was a teacher, I would be keeping them indoors. You would negate any risk factors associated with them.
Exactly what happened in my son's school yesterday. They watched a movie instead of going out to play.
Fair enough.
They had an air-conditioned room, so the children got rotated through to watch a movie in there. They did less activity. They didn't go outside. And I have to say, the teachers, particularly at my son's school, were keen to keep it open. But the pressure it puts on parents as well. Schools are turning around at short notice saying, come and collect your little one. People trying to work, trying to hold down a job in all of this. It's incredibly stressful. And as you say, first and foremost, it's not good for the kids either.
Do you know, when I was at primary school, do you know how many people were in my class?
How many?
44.
What?
That's
44, right? Yeah. 44 in the class. Do I ever remember being sent home? Bear in mind, we were in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. I tell this story in my autobiography that I was on board a bus that was hijacked. Right, and the bus was burnt, and this scrote got on board, and he had a petrol bomb, whatever, and he says, we're commandeering this for the Irish Republican Army, whatever, and they burnt the bus, and we got off, and I ran down the road to school, and anyway, ran up the driveway to school, and I was late, and the headmaster, who's a priest, he was standing there reading his morning prayers, and I said, Father, I said, the bus, she said, the bus explodes, and I said, there's the bus, I was on board that smoke. I said, hijacked, and they came aboard with guns, and they burnt it and whatever, and but anyway, I said, I'm okay, Father, everything's okay, I'm okay, luckily. And he went, detention. and that was it. Nowadays, I'd have had a carer, I'd have a counselling,
that's right.
I'd have post-traumatic stress disorder, which I probably do have. But you know, you look back at it now, I swear to you, mate, that is a true story, right? So,
Yeah, no, it's gone mad.
Let's talk about this leadership battle now, and obviously, Sam, from the political point of view, you've gone with the Daily Mail. And this is another attack. They don't like Penny Mordaunt.
That is for sure. And they've got a whole 2 pages devoted to stories that are quite critical of Penny Mordaunt. But the one that's particularly interested in is Penny Mordaunt, her boss in the Trade Department, International Trade Department, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, has made quite a stinging attack on Penny Mordaunt, saying that she was sometimes missing in action. Colleagues have to pick up the pieces for her. And
she's not the first one to say that either.
No,
is she?
that's it.
I think Lord Frost said the same.
Lord Frost and Lord Moylan, a regular on your show, I believe. And they all say that actually she's often not around to be seen when she's needed. And Anne-Marie Trevelyan, a Brexiteer who you would have expected to perhaps throw in behind Penny Mordaunt, she says that actually she's not really the right person for the job. She's not always reliable, and she's clearly been plotting this campaign instead of doing her day job over the last few months.
I mean, Penny Mordaunt said that she felt she'd been a victim of a series of slurs over the weekend in the papers. And in her defence, you know, it's very hard to come back to those sorts of criticisms, isn't it? But Anne-Marie Trevelyan's an interesting one. She's supporting Tom Tugendhat. He's now been knocked out. So where would someone from her sort of position probably be sending her vote today, do you think?
Well, this is the very interesting thing, because actually Tom Tugendhat's supporters, you would expect to naturally go towards Penny Mordaunt. They're the kind of one nation Tories that in the middle of the party. But actually, when you've got attacks like this, you do wonder if that is what's actually going to happen, and whether it might actually spread out across 3 or 4 candidates.
But it is interesting. All of us in this business, we hear stories about politicians. Those, and I'm not just talking about those who have put themselves forward for leader. A lot of people who didn't put themselves forward as well. And you hear stories. Everybody's gossiping about everybody else, and you just wonder why some stories hit the papers and some don't.
Yeah, you heard some gossip, didn't you?
I heard some,
you can't repeat, but about one of the contenders.
I like to call it verifiable sources as opposed to gossip. But
some interesting goings-on.
But I suppose it depends what political allegiance the newspaper has as well.
There is that, and obviously there will be all the candidates deny they're involved in any of the dark arts, but their supporters and particularly their kind of not even necessarily the supporters right next to them, but they'll have their outriders, people who aren't directly linked to them, who will do the briefing on their behalf. So there's no,
connection.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. Well, Martin, you know all about this. You've been through this.
The dark arts, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, you get used to being backstabbed and the smears. That's all part of the terrain of being in politics.
How does it feel?
You get used to it, and I'm sure she's bigger
Do you really?
than me.
It's just wash
You
off
do,
duck's
yeah.
back?
You should be a TV presenter.
Yeah, but if you don't provoke people, what's the point? What's the point existing?
Yeah.
So that's part of the role.
I do think, people say, oh, well, he or she's not very popular. I think if you've got no enemies in life, you're a very dull person.
Precisely. Yeah, I totally
Isabel.
agree. Yeah, and that brings us...
So everybody loves you.
You're saying I need more enemies, is what you're trying to say. So what you're trying to say, in a backhanded kind of way, is people like me.
They do. And do you know what? I lead the charge. I like you more than anybody.
So as you were saying...
Yeah, so very quickly on to something of common sense that Rishi Sunak has spoken about. And a big thing that we're very, very passionate about, the Reclaim Party, is policing streets and not tweets. This ridiculous idea that the police should be going after what you think and what you say on social media in case it offends somebody. It's transphobic, it's Islamophobic, you name it. The police have no business in policing language. George Orwell called that right in 1984. And yet we still see that they're getting political around things like pride and trans issues. So Sunak is saying, let's put more dedication towards beats and less on the tweets. And he particularly mentions about grooming gangs. Now, after the show, I'm going up to Telford and Rotherham, speaking to survivors of sexual abuse scandals. It's a huge issue that nobody's addressed during this campaign. Why are they not talking about this? This should be front-page news. We should guarantee this stuff
never happens again.
Yeah. And rhetoric is one thing. Action is another. Sunak's making the right noises, but do we believe him?
My friend, I just watched a documentary, 4-part documentary on Netflix about Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yes.
Oh, everybody's outraged about that. Hollywood loves that, whatever it is, about these two people involved there. But if we were to hear about the scandals that you're talking about in detail, is it just too distasteful for the audience to handle?
Well, there's two things that people are saying at the moment, and that is either the police are afraid of looking racist and causing divisions, or more pertinently, the Labour councils in question are reliant on votes and so therefore don't want to rock the car. So what we've got going is a thing called the Bad Law Project. We're going to represent survivors. We're going to take these people to court and get action, because this cannot ever happen again.
Yeah, it must be awful to meet a survivor face to face and to talk and see the pain and the anguish and realise that nobody cared for that girl.
Precisely. And it's a heartbreaking stain on our society. And, talk is one thing, but we need action. This cannot ever happen again.
Well, staying with the crime theme, we are going to be talking to a burglar after this break. But just for now, I want to say thank you to Martin Daubney, Sam Lister. It's been a really interesting pay-per-view this morning. We've enjoyed it very much. Come back again. We'll see you again very soon. Thank you.
30 minutes before 9 o'clock. Thank you for your company, bringing you up to date with news. Here's how it stands. The government has won a vote of confidence in Parliament. 349 votes to 238. Labour had sought to hold a confidence vote to try to force Boris Johnson out sooner, but the government argued it was unnecessary because the Prime Minister has already said he will go in September.
Unions have warned the government against giving public sector workers a pay rise below the rate of inflation. An announcement's expected later today on pay rises for public sector workers, including nurses, teachers and doctors. The speculation, the offer will be around 5%, which unions argue is less than half the current level of inflation.
There'll be an announcement today from the government saying it's investing £11.5 billion into train services in the north of England. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, says that investment will address what he calls the historic imbalance in funding between north and south.
Now, really interesting segment up next. We've been talking a lot this morning about how hot things are at the moment, temperatures increasing again today. And as we're all trying to keep our homes cool, whether it's doors open, windows open, it means there's potentially opportunities for thieves.
Right, OK. So does a crime wave or does a heat wave lead to a crime wave? Let's ask former burglar turned security expert. We say good morning to Michael Fraser. Michael, good to see you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning.
Yeah. Michael, this is a thieves' charter, is it? Somebody's nicked his laptop there. Wait a minute, he's gone. We'll try and get him back. But basically, the point that Michael's going to try and make is that we're all obsessed with being hot and sweaty and whatever, and we let our guard down. And when it comes to your home, what's the thing you do? You open your windows, don't you? Michael's there. Let's see if we've got you again.
Hello.
Sorry, Michael. Michael, so basically, the hot weather and our reaction to it by opening windows and things can be a thieves' charter. Tell us more.
The problem is, the hotter it gets, the more we tend to leave doors open, windows open, and this gives the opportunist burglar a chance to break into your property through the open windows and burgle you while you're asleep upstairs.
Scary thing, isn't it, that burglars are quite happy to come in even if the house or home is occupied, and it could happen even in broad daylight. So what are thieves looking for then? Should people never leave their windows and doors open, or is there a way of doing that safely?
You can leave windows open if you're downstairs. That's not a problem. It's just people tend to leave them open and go upstairs. I always suggest keep them shut. Open the doors, obviously, while you're down there, but not while you're upstairs. Burglary can be committed within 30 seconds. They could break in, get what they want, and back out. So it's not a good idea to leave anything open and leave that area. You're better off closing the windows, going upstairs, and then you know it is safe. Take keys out the door. People do silly things like leaving calendars in the kitchen, facing the back window, telling the burglar what days they're out. It's all just common sense things that protect your property.
I suppose the thing is, life is very fast-paced, and people, I mean, you know, say they're packing up, they're going with a family, they're trying to go on holiday or whatever, and they forget things. They forget to do obvious things. What are the big do's and don'ts if you're heading off on holiday?
Well, again, it is just common sense. All you've got to do is make sure the place is locked up, obscure any windows downstairs so people can't look into the property, and don't announce it on social media that you're going on holiday. That is a growing trend now, where people do look on social media to find out who is going on holiday. It is seriously just common sense things. Keys out the door. Make sure you have a cage on the inside of your letterbox to stop letterbox fishing. And lock up, take keys out, put window locks on, photograph every room in your house, because the biggest thing is they tip the place upside down, and it takes you a while to think about what's been stolen. If you have pictures, it's good for the insurance company, and it's also good for you to remember.
Michael, just tell us a little bit about how you saw the error of your ways. You describe yourself as a former burglar, so presumably you don't do that anymore. But what stopped you, or what led you into it in the first place? And, you know, have you ever met any of your victims, for example? Tell us a bit about your thieving past.
Yeah, I grew up in children's homes. To be part of the group, it was peer pressure. I joined the group to go out on burglaries because I suppose I wanted to be a part of them. At the age of 17, even though I'd grown up in institutions, I got caught for receiving stolen goods, and my social worker, which was very good, said to me, "You're on your way to prison." Even though I'd grown up in institutions, the thought of prison frightened me to death, and it made me change my way. If I'd have gone to prison, that would have lived with me for the rest of my life. That stopped me in my tracks, and I just changed and decided, you know, this isn't the way for me. Burglary, I do talks in prisons, schools. Burglary, you commit it, you sell your items, you've got no remorse. It's only when you do face the victims that you realise what you've done to somebody else, that you realise the pain you've caused. I was glad to get out of it, and what I do now is just try and help people really protect their property.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've been talking this morning about the leadership debate that's raging at the moment, and Rishi Sunak saying he's going to get beats on the streets, get police officers back trying to patrol the streets to make Britain safer. And interesting hearing you describe prison, the thought or the threat of prison as a deterrent. And a lot of people will be pleased to hear that, because a lot of people talk about whether or not it works, and the fact that you go into prisons as well and trying to explain to people about the impact. Because, you know, I've got friends who've been horribly burgled, and girlfriends of mine who just the violation of having had a complete stranger without permission rifling through their possessions, treasured possessions, and just being frightened every night alone in the house for months, if not years, to come afterwards. It does have a huge devastating impact on people, even not just the value, financial value of it, but the emotional value.
It does. The problem you've got is the police haven't got the resources to sort out burglary. It's very low down on the rate of things that are serious. It's only if they've assaulted the person or, you know, they're recognised. So it's very difficult for the police to sort it out. What we've got to do is ourselves look at our own security. I always say, look at your property. Imagine you've lost your keys. How would you get into it? Because believe you me, the opportunist finds that way very quickly.
Michael, sobering words there, Michael. Really appreciate it. Michael Fraser is a burglary expert. Thank you. And we say goodbye to you. Thanks for your time this morning and your advice, Michael, there. So that's to try and stop turning a heat wave into a crime wave, right? Okay. So we are going to take a break there. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to a former Donald Trump advisor who shares her thoughts on, and I didn't think this was possible,
I know,
Hillary Clinton may run again for the presidency.
Groundhog Day, isn't it? Clinton versus Trump in 2024. We've been here before. Let's see if Russia gets involved this time.
OK, right now we're going to give you a look at the weather and pay attention, because it could very well affect you adversely.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. 40 Celsius in some parts of the UK today, mid to high 30s for many, and that's why there's a red warning for extreme heat. These are unprecedented, record-breaking temperatures that could and very likely will cause impacts to health and to infrastructure. The heat has been moving our way across the whole of the UK during the last 24 hours, and it intensifies across southeast Scotland, northeast England, into central and eastern parts of England during the rest of the day. With clear skies, although with a bit of a breeze, those temperatures will be rising all day. Mid-30s by mid-morning, and then by the afternoon, mid to high 30s. 34 Celsius in southeast Scotland, Scotland's hottest day on record, and 40 Celsius for central and eastern England. Truly extraordinary temperatures could cause impacts for many. It will be cooler for southwest England as well as for parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. And that cool air is separated from the heat with an area of showers which will move east during Tuesday night into the start of Wednesday. And those showers, heavy at times, will pop up just about anywhere overnight. And although it's still a warm night, nowhere near as warm as it was last night. 18 or 19 Celsius in the south, 14, 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bright start for many on Wednesday. Still a few showers around, first thing across Wales and the southwest, central and eastern Scotland as well. And then by the afternoon, the focus for showers moves into the Midlands, northern England, eastern Scotland, and eventually East Anglia and the southeast. Could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. And still a hot day, nowhere near as hot, but still a hot day in the east, 30 Celsius. But I think further west, Scotland, Northern Ireland, high teens, and for much of England and Wales in the west, we're looking at low 20s. Back to more typical summer weather for the UK Thursday, Friday, sunny spells and showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio,
on digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Tom Tugendhat is knocked out of the Tory leadership contest with 4 candidates remaining.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time, 9 o'clock on this Tuesday, the 19th of July. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss and Kemi Badenoch are the final 4 contestants left in the Tory leadership contest. Another round of voting will take place this afternoon.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson will hold his final cabinet meeting at number 10. Conservative MPs have backed Johnson's government in a confidence vote, giving him 7 more weeks in Downing Street before handing over to his successor, whoever that may be.
UK is to experience its hottest day on record today. Some temperatures could reach up to 42 degrees Celsius. The Met Office has issued an extreme heat warning, with Network Rail discouraging people from making unnecessary journeys.
And Prince Harry has delivered a keynote speech to the United Nations in New York. The Duke of Sussex spoke about abortion, climate change and the war in Ukraine. Yeah, and thanks very much indeed for all your views. You know how to get in touch. And Deborah say, can someone explain why Rishi Sunak is, inverted commas, entitled? He's a minority candidate from an immigrant family who did well. He's clever, so he got to Oxford and was a Fulbright scholar at Stanford. And he's that clever, he'd have succeeded from a state school.
Well, yeah, but he did go to a £40,000 a year Winchester College schooling, so that's probably why people say he's entitled. That's not to say he's not clever. You can be both, I'd say.
She also says for pretty much a thankless public service job, he cast himself.
That's fair,
yeah. Except there's a lot of profile, a lot of thing to be able to say.
Yeah, but nobody makes that point. I think that's a fair point. You know, for
public service,
a billionaire,
serve.
He's serving when he could be sipping
back.
coladas on a Caribbean island.
Yeah. Who you marry shouldn't come into it. In any way, his wife's father's a self-made entrepreneur.
Yeah, very conservative story, as he claimed on Sunday night.
Okay.
Maggie says, why didn't any of the candidates put their hand up and say, regardless of the outcome of the trial by media, yes, they'd offer Boris a place in the cabinet because of the good things he's managed to achieve?
Well, Maggie, nice point, but a bit naive. Somewhat. Politics. I mean, do you actually think Boris Johnson would sit in a cabinet and play along the game?
Well, that was the fault of the
else?
question then, wasn't it? Because that's, you know, they asked that question. It was just nonsense. Of course, he's going to go and make lots of money now.
Yeah, and they're going to say,
fine.
you know, once you've tasted the forbidden fruit, you come back for more, don't you?
What, money?
No, the job, the glory of being the top job.
I see.
You're not going to sit there being
you're not going to be Chancellor when you've been running the show.
You'll be, okay.
Anyway, more on that in a sec.
Let's have the sting. The battle for number 10. So the Tory leadership contenders will be whittled down to 3 today.
Yeah, MPs are set to cast their votes in the 4th round. It comes as the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Tom Tugendhat, was eliminated after receiving the fewest votes last night.
Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, who we've just been talking about. So he's holding on to first place, 115 votes he got.
Meanwhile, the Trade Minister, Penny Mordaunt, took 2nd place.
Foreign Secretary Liz Truss in 3rd.
Ex-Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch came 4th.
Final 2 candidates will be decided by Wednesday, so that's tomorrow.
Well, earlier on, we spoke to political consultant Katie Frank and deputy editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers, on the candidates' performances so far.
There's a lot of agreement across them. There's not enough debate. I mean, when there have been kind of, a semblance of debate, it's been quite personal, it's been quite catty. We've talked a lot about Liz Truss's Lib Dem past, or people, having a go at Sunak's wife's tax affairs, but that's not really the substance of this. And even when there are differences on the economy, they're only talking about tax cuts now, tax cuts later, not really getting to grips with the fundamental problems affecting the economy. They're not talking about how they're going to deal with the energy crisis or things like that. So, yeah, what we need is some more substance.
On the tax cuts issue, though, I just want to bring that up because this has, as you say, pretty much been the only subject of debate, really, besides the personal tax. The IMF chief has come out today and they have said vows to cut taxes at this stage is a mistake. So they now lend their voice to the chorus that comes from the Office for Budget Responsibility. We've had former chancellors coming out saying the same, all essentially agreeing with either Kemi Badenoch or Rishi Sunak on this. So why then is it still so much the case that there is support for what Liz Truss is calling for, these cuts to taxes, and also Penny Mordaunt, although she hasn't really thrashed out or fleshed out her economic plans?
Yeah, I mean, it's not some great mystery why the UK has the highest tax burden since the 1970s. It's because the economy isn't growing. It's not because, the current Tory government loves putting up taxes. They would rather be slashing them, I'm sure. But there is...
There's this whole, sorry, Fraser, there's this whole area that people don't talk about. I know you mentioned that. Oh, they don't like putting up taxes. Do you know what they're doing? Under George Osborne, they then creep into everybody's past and they're looking in retrospective tax. The amount of people that are being hit by the loan charge situation, IR35, and nobody talks about this.
Or they let people, fall into different tax bands by not increasing those with inflation and things like that. And you have a huge amount of fiscal drag. But they would love to, if they... In terms of what they'd like to be saying is that we're cutting tax. That seems to be what the Tory membership wants to hear.
I want to know from Katie Frank. Katie's a political consultant. Will they have to change their tune on this? Well, the thing is, we haven't got another big debate tonight. They've all chickened out of that, or certainly 2 of them have chickened out of that. But Fraser makes a very, very good point here. They're talking rubbish, basically, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they're talking in a lot of meaningless platitudes because they don't want to get into the depth of policy because that will come to bite them later. And also, the issue is they're walking a very fine tightrope at the moment. They still have to win the votes of their colleagues, members of Parliament. And the members of Parliament do not reflect necessarily the grassroots of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
The grassroots of the Conservative Party certainly are more socially conservative than a lot of the members of Parliament. This is why there has been the attack on Penny Mordaunt around gender issues, sexist issues, etc. It isn't for no reason. This is very tactical. And the fact, coming back to the tax policy, for instance, this plays well with the base. Now, whether it's reality or not is another question.
Yes.
And the issue is that Labour are just going to smack a lot of these things on their leaflets at the next election and say, what in all of over a decade have the Conservative Party achieved?
So there we go, debate a little bit earlier on in the programme on the leadership contest. Now, the family of Archie Battersby continue to fight for him despite a court ruling that would allow doctors to switch off his life support machine. As their appeal process comes to a conclusion, GB News has spoken to 2 parents who went through a similar ordeal to Archie's family, Connie Yates and Chris Gard, the parents of Charlie Gard, who died in 2017. Our reporter, Rosie Wright, has the story.
It's been 5 years since Charlie Gard passed away, just 1 week before his first birthday. His death came after the Royal Court of Justice ruled against extending Charlie's treatment for a rare condition which affected his brain and muscles. GB News spoke to his parents, who've since had a second son, Oliver, who's almost 2.
We're going down to London next week for his 5-year
anniversary of his passing. So we always go to his grave and release butterflies. So we'll still be doing the same thing, won't we? But you know, it's coming up 5 years now, but it's not any easier really. You know, you sort of learn to live with it, but you know how time's normally a healer. I think when you lose a child, time doesn't really help that much. But I just feel like he's sort of around us. Do you know what I mean? Sort of with us in a way.
Save Charlie God! Save Charlie God!
The support we had during Charlie's case was phenomenal. You know, if it wasn't for the donations of the general public, we would never have had the even opportunity of going to America. And unfortunately, that was blocked by the hospital and the courts. But you know, we set up the Charlie Gard Foundation after his passing, and you know, we get a lot of support through that. So you know, we always feel very touched that he, you know, touched so many lives around the world.
Connie and Chris have just won a landmark victory, determined that other parents won't face the same experience as them.
The main point of Charlie's Law is to stop these cases getting to the point of having to go to court, because it's bad enough when you've got a sick child, and to be then taken to court at the same time to try and fight for your child's life is just unbearable. So anything we can do through Charlie's Law to stop these cases escalating to court is the main aim, really, whether that be mediation or, you know, just making sure that the parents' voices are properly considered and listened to.
It's a much bigger problem than people realise, and it costs the government or the millions of pounds in court cases.
Another family who are currently facing a similar battle to keep their child on life support are the parents of Archie Battersby. Archie's 12. He's been on life support in England since April after doctors declared that he was brain stem dead. The courts have ruled that his life support should now be switched off. His parents are fighting this decision. Well, Charlie Gard's parents empathise.
We've been there, we know how it feels. And all I can say, you know, is our thoughts are with Archie and his family. It's devastating for everyone involved. And there's nothing I can really say that's going to make them feel any better. You know, losing a child under any circumstances is just dreadful. But, you know, our thoughts are with Archie and his family at this time.
MPs will now debate Charlie's Law in Parliament. If it comes to pass, then parents may not have to go to court and can use mediators to work out what's best for their children.
Such an emotive subject, that. Rosie Wright reporting there, and just our hearts go out really to all involved.
What can you say? 11 minutes past 9 o'clock. Bringing you up to date news-wise, here's what's happening. The government has won a vote of confidence by 349 to 38 votes. Labour had sought to hold that vote to try and force Boris Johnson out sooner, but the government argued it was an unnecessary vote because the Prime Minister has already said he will go in September.
Unions have warned the government against giving public sector workers a pay rise below the rate of inflation. An announcement's expected later today on pay rises for public sector workers, including nurses, teachers and doctors. There's speculation the offers will be around 5%, which unions argue is less than half the current level of inflation.
Government will announce today that it's investing £11.5 billion into train services in the north of England. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says that investment will address the historic imbalance in funding between the north and south.
Well, you are watching Breakfast. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we'll be talking about Hillary Clinton. Could she be putting her hat back in the ring? Yeah, I got the phrase right there. To run for president in 2024.
Telling us what ring that will be is the former Donald Trump advisor for all the political news right across the pond. First up, the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. 40 Celsius in some parts of the UK today, mid to high 30s for many, and that's why there's a red warning for extreme heat. These are unprecedented record-breaking temperatures that could and very likely will cause impacts to health and to infrastructure. The heat has been moving our way across the whole of the UK during the last 24 hours, and it intensifies across southeast Scotland, northeast England, into central and eastern parts of England during the rest of the day. With clear skies, although with a bit of a breeze, those temperatures will be rising all day. Mid-30s by mid-morning, and then by the afternoon, mid to high 30s. 34 Celsius in southeast Scotland, Scotland's hottest day on record, and 40 Celsius for central and eastern England. Truly extraordinary temperatures could cause impacts for many. It will be cooler for southwest England as well as for parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. And that cool air is separated from the heat with an area of showers which will move east during Tuesday night into the start of Wednesday. And those showers, heavy at times, will pop up just about anywhere overnight. And although it's still a warm night, nowhere near as warm as it was last night. 18 or 19 Celsius in the south, 14, 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bright start for many on Wednesday. Still a few showers around, first thing across Wales and the southwest, central and eastern Scotland as well. And then by the afternoon, the focus for showers moves into the Midlands, northern England, eastern Scotland, and eventually East Anglia and the southeast. Could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. And still a hot day, nowhere near as hot, but still a hot day in the east, 30 Celsius. But I think further west, Scotland, Northern Ireland, high teens, and for much of England and Wales in the west, we're looking at low 20s. Back to more typical summer weather for the UK Thursday, Friday, sunny spells and showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
The Duke of Sussex has criticised the American Supreme Court on the Roe versus Wade ruling, calling it a global assault on democracy and freedom.
Well, speaking during the keynote address at the UN, Prince Harry described the ruling as rolling back the constitutional rights in the United States.
For more on this, let's speak to the woman with the biggest, longest name that I've ever had, and that's Diana Furchtgott-Roth. Yes?
Yes.
Does that more or less, you let me off with that?
Perfect.
She's an amazing commentator. She's an economist as well. Here's the first thing I want to know, because you've got opinion in everything. You're very good commentating in lots of shows in America. Right, OK, all very good, Wade versus Roe, whatever it is. Why do I need to hear from Prince Harry? Why was it Prince Harry? Why do I care what Prince Harry has had to say about this?
First of all, you're right. You really shouldn't. And it's given more freedom to different states in the United States to set their own parameters for what they want their abortion laws to be. So it hasn't ended abortion in the states. And if you look at the EU, for example, I mean, many countries have 12 weeks within that time you can have an abortion. Slovenia has 10 weeks. You might ask, why doesn't Prince Harry criticise those?
OK, so you're supportive of the rules that have been changed, and you're
Which means what?
Well,
pro or anti-abortion?
Anti-abortion.
And supportive of the right of states to decide how they want to handle the abortion.
And you're supportive of states that might decide that women shouldn't be allowed access to an abortion under any circumstances?
Well, I think this is difficult to say, and the point is not what states decide. The point is, do the states, under the Constitution of the United States, have the right to decide their own laws on abortion? If they decide some terrible law that no one likes, people will leave that state physically and go to another. Just like people have been moving from New York and California to Texas and Florida because they don't like the tax laws.
What's the point of making it more difficult then?
The point is to follow the law and follow the Constitution. What does the Constitution allow? And the Constitution says certain laws should be done by the states and certain by the federal government. So, for example, drugs are the purview for various reasons of the federal government because they used to be taxed.
Look, there's so much I want to talk to you about.
So
I don't
much,
want to get bogged down in abortion.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people would say that ultimately, when it comes to the matter of abortion, women should decide rather than it shouldn't necessarily be legalistic arguments. But that we can park to one side.
Do you know what? What do you think? I mean, in America, I mean, there's so much to commentate on and so much you're visiting London at the moment. What do you make of this Conservative leadership race? I mean, as a Republican, they are, I mean, they're basically
the right
Republicans.
wing,
yeah, right.
Right. Well, as a Republican, I can see that there are a number of very, very qualified candidates, but the leading one, Rishi Sunak, he wants to raise the corporate tax from 19% to 25%.
As an economist, what have you got to get?
Terrible idea.
Why?
It's a terrible idea because it'll drive corporate investment out of Britain to other areas.
But Diana, he's saying the country's broken. We've got to face facts.
Well, he should cut spending. I mean, he should not raise the corporate income tax, and also raising the corporate income tax could very well result in lower tax revenues, just as raising capital gains taxes generally result in lower tax revenues.
All the unions who represent public spending, the teachers, the armed forces, the police, everybody who's paid out of the state purse, they're all looking for a settlement today. Inflation's running at 10%. They're probably going to be lucky to get 5%, and we're facing a summer of discontent with strikes and things maybe as a result. What message would you have to those unions?
Well, the message is that we're going through very difficult times all over the world, and that inflation's a problem, and that they should fight for lower spending, lower taxes, lower regulations, more energy production, to lower prices of energy and electricity.
Well, no. You're talking about fossil fuels here, aren't you? You know, I mean, high touch. We're all sweltering. I don't know where you're from. You're from Maryland, aren't you?
I'm from Maryland.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know how hot it is there, but we're feeling the heat here, and it raises climate change again, and it concentrates people's mind onto what are we actually doing to save the planet, and fossil fuels don't come very highly up the list, do they?
It's fair to say, yeah.
Well, weather is different from climate change, and having spent many summers in Britain in the 70s where it was raining the whole time, a couple of hot days would have been very, very welcome, and the weather's supposed to break tomorrow. So this is weather, not necessarily climate change, but nuclear power apparently has been declared green by the EU. That doesn't have any emissions. It's very efficient.
Yes.
France produces 70% of its electricity with nuclear, and we should be looking at that.
And you and I will remember, we're old enough to remember in the 70s where you had that, what was that nuclear incident in upstate New York or whatever, the...
3 Mile Island.
3 Mile Island, yeah. You've had Chernobyl. I mean, nuclear was branded the worst possible option, and now it's amazing to hear it being called green.
Well, there's a lot of new technology. No one was killed at 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
And if we're going to have low emissions and we're going to have electric vehicles and we're going to have air conditioning, we need a reliable form.
Diana, we're almost out of time, but I'm dying to ask you really about the presidential race. You wouldn't normally expect candidates to declare until probably November next year, I think probably fair to say. Lots of speculation about whether Donald Trump will run again. I know that you were a special advisor to him. What about Rob DeSantis? A lot of people are saying, look, we've had all the Capitol Hill hearings recently, and it would just be better to go for Rob DeSantis, where you have all the same policies without any of the drama.
Governor DeSantis is one candidate. There are about 24 candidates in the Republican Party, many very, very qualified. There's Ted Cruz, for example, from Texas. There's 3 from Florida, Marco Rubio, Ron DeSantis, Rick Scott. Everybody wants to be president, including Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Now, there are many Democrats coming into the race, too, because many people think that President Biden will not want to have a second term.
Do you think we'll see a rerun of Trump versus Clinton?
We very well could, but no one knows right now. Anyone who tells you that they know is pretending.
And who are you putting your support behind?
Oh, I'm going to support whatever candidate the Republicans put forward.
What about President Biden? What do you make of him and how he's running the country?
He's doing a terrible job of running the country. This is the 1970s all over again. Foreign policy debacle, high inflation, high fuel prices, and these peasant dresses coming back again. It's the 1970s.
Peasant dresses?
Peasant dresses. You know, these floppy peasant dresses coming back that were in vogue in the 1970s and are now in vogue now.
I was thinking about policies that he was overseeing, but you're talking about fashion.
Well, fashion, the same fashions in the 1970s. We're getting the 1970s all over again. But the 1970s were followed by the 1980s with Ronald Reagan, the greatest economic boom there was, and that's what we have to hope for in the future.
What about the future of the so-called special relationship? Do you think the special relationship really does exist?
I really do think that the special relationship exists, yes. Despite what President Biden has been saying in the past few days, the special relationship really does exist, yes.
OK. Diana Furchtgott-Roth, really interesting to talk to you. Lovely to meet you in the flesh. We've spoken many times before, but never person to person.
Yes,
Thank you for coming in. Enjoy London.
I will, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, that's it from us for today. We'll be back bright and early from 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, be careful if you're out there in the hot sunshine. It is going to be a scorcher, a scorchio today. And, you know, if you've got fair skin, we were talking about the dangers of heat stroke. We were talking about the dangers of sunstroke and heat rashes and heat exhaustion, which is something I wasn't aware of. These are all different things. I mean, just be sensible. Drink plenty of liquids.
Look after your dogs and cats.
Particularly water, yeah. Do all that. Most
Try
of
and
all.
enjoy it. And enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Try to enjoy it anyway. Very good. Have a good day. We will take a break. We've got the weather here. Tom Harwood after that.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. 40 Celsius in some parts of the UK today. Mid to high 30s for many. And that's why there's a red warning for extreme heat. These are unprecedented record-breaking temperatures that could and very likely will cause impacts to health and to infrastructure. The heat has been moving our way across the whole of the UK during the last 24 hours, and it intensifies across southeast Scotland, northeast England, into central and eastern parts of England during the rest of the day. With clear skies, although with a bit of a breeze, those temperatures will be rising all day. Mid-30s by mid-morning, and then by the afternoon, mid to high 30s. 34 Celsius in southeast Scotland, Scotland's hottest day on record, and 40 Celsius for central and eastern England. Truly extraordinary temperatures could cause impacts for many. It will be cooler for southwest England as well as for parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. And that cool air is separated from the heat with an area of showers which will move east during Tuesday night into the start of Wednesday. And those showers, heavy at times, will pop up just about anywhere overnight. And although it's still a warm night, nowhere near as warm as it was last night. 18 or 19 Celsius in the south, 14, 15 for Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bright start for many on Wednesday. Still a few showers around, first thing across Wales and the southwest, central and eastern Scotland as well. And then by the afternoon, the focus for showers moves into the Midlands, northern England, eastern Scotland, and eventually East Anglia and the southeast. Could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. And still a hot day, nowhere near as hot, but still a hot day in the east, 30 Celsius. But I think further west, Scotland, Northern Ireland, high teens, and for much of England and Wales in the west, we're looking at low 20s. Back to more typical summer weather for the UK Thursday, Friday, sunny spells and showers.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all,